At the very start of the journey, he simply watched her descend against the backdrop of the radiant moon. Pursued by a bear, remorse welled up within the man for having ventured so greedily deep into the mountains. Stumbling over a stone, he nearly lost his footing. The protagonist called out anxiously, reaching out to halt the animal, but the man, gripped by desperation, shouted that the creature still lurked behind him. The beast toppled to the ground, its impressive form losing all menace. The stranger, eyes bright with relief, remarked how fortunate it was that he'd happened to be here. An air of admiration surrounded his claim that the protagonist must be a fearless adventurer. Yet the young man, modest as ever, quietly insisted there was nothing extraordinary about him at all. Convinced the beast was merely wounded, he realized fortune had favored him. Thanks to the boy, he had escaped with nothing more than a scratch. Suddenly, surprise lit up his face. Realization dawned as internal injuries made themselves known. Broken ribs threatened to pierce lungs and unleash a surge of uncontrollable rage. The stranger moved without awareness, driven by the instincts of a servant sworn to the Lord of Monsters, mankind's sworn foe. Any doubts vanished. The protagonist recognized the creature before him for what it truly was. Yet now, this fearsome enemy had become his patient. With a surge of magic, a sword materialized in his hand. The task involved searching for something hidden deep within the beast. An apology slipped from his lips, acknowledging if his words had cut too deep. Allowing the other wounds to heal on their own seemed like the wiser choice now. The thought lingered in his mind that the other man was still planning to kill him. In response to the question about its well-being, the monster remained silent. The man understood the situation at once, unlike the stranger who remained puzzled. Without a trace of emotion, he replied that it wasn't the case at all. Instantly, realization dawned upon him. It was a rare male bear. The creature had become enraged because the man had taken its cubs. Driven by fury, the bear pursued him relentlessly, showing the raw determination of a wild beast despite its injuries. Yet the protagonist remained unaware of this truth. Surprisingly, he replied that the boy had already figured out his eggs had been stolen. The protein enthusiasts explained they, too, have feelings. With careful attention, the faint voices of the animals can almost be heard. The stranger needs to explore these parts, so he will give him a ride to the base. At first, he had no idea who this mysterious stranger could be. Someone possessing such formidable strength, remarkable healing skills, and an uncanny knowledge of monsters. Eventually, the stranger revealed his identity as Zeke Fettel, while the girl accompanying him introduced herself as Ari, a veterinarian. Administering a healing vaccine to the cow brought almost instant results as the animal began to recover right away. The farmer and his daughter watched in amazement at the cow's swift return to health. Gratitude filled his voice as he thanked the veterinarian, admitting he now owed him a debt. The veterinarian, however, simply brushed off the thanks with quiet modesty. Curiosity sparked in the girl when she noticed a glow spreading above the earth and asked about it. The owner explained that this light was a sign of the veterinarian's unique talent and the reason he stood apart from ordinary people. Wondering if she might one day possess such a gift, the girl voiced her hopes. Her father gently assured her that the veterinarian's abilities could not easily be matched. Zeke, however, offered another perspective, insisting that true worth lay not in rare talents, but in the genuine desire to help others. Encouraged not to be too modest, she was reminded that Zeke was a remarkable specialist, perhaps even surpassing his own father. Still, Zeke insisted with quiet certainty that he was far from reaching his father's skill, admitting that the man had been much better. His father had passed away long ago. She offered heartfelt sympathy, but Zik calmly explained that time had softened his grief, and he had come to terms with the loss. Warmth shone in her eyes, touched by his honesty. She silently resolved to be equally open with her feelings if that was what Zik desired. Nitz then suggested they leave the lizard alone before it unintentionally revealed anything more. Ariane turned toward the lady, his thoughts now drifting far from the cow he had just saved. The rescue behind him, a new set of concerns quietly surfaced. The owner, noticing his distant gaze, inquired what was weighing on his mind. The stable proved to have poor ventilation, with a thick layer of manure almost entirely blocking the flow of fresh air. More frequent cleaning was needed to keep the place in better condition. In the far corner, the bull stood, hunched and gaunt, looking much weaker than during the last visit. Dai believed it would be best to move him to a different spot. When asked about the distribution of protein, he observed that too much concentrate had been added. The man nodded in agreement with this assessment. All of them moved sluggishly, breaths coming in labored gasps, their bodies weighed down by obvious excess. Orders from above guide each of their actions. Zik remained convinced that management wanted the animals to grow even fatter. Still, he doubted the owner would willingly put his family in danger. Realization dawned that his companions spoke the truth. The window for carrying out his orders was rapidly closing, as they had been issued weeks ago. The veterinarian noted that, though untouched by the case itself, its shadow lingered unmistakably in the air. Suddenly, the shrill ring of the telephone cut through the silence. A gruff voice asked what had brought him to this place. The protagonist calmly explained that he was at the Eastern Ranch, conducting a routine inspection. Outrage flickered across his face, since it was nothing more than a routine livestock inspection, 30 minutes at most. Zeke nodded in agreement, but remarked that even the simplest tasks demanded more energy than they should. In his mind, it seemed like the man was just making excuses. There was no point in wasting precious time on them. One way or another, they would still get their hands on the meat. Silence hung between them, as the man kept his thoughts to himself. A harsh command demanded his immediate return. Zeke replied brusquely, assuring them he was already on his way. The girl watched, noticing how draining the work had become for him, although it was clear he'd long since grown accustomed to it. The situation struck him as dreadful. Everyone recognized the sheer effort the veterinarian put in, yet the wealthy and the aristocrats seemed utterly indifferent. For them, appearances mattered more than genuine assistance. No wonder their attitudes toward animals remained so careless, Zik reflected. A local resident pointed out that since the new king's arrival, livestock farming had languished, leaving the entire region with just a single veterinarian. Though they might consider themselves lucky for even that, the man confessed he wished Zeke would leave and let his skills flourish elsewhere. Staying here was a waste of potential. Silently, Zeke disagreed. Abandoning the people around him was unthinkable, yet the man pressed on, insisting that if Zeke only cared for himself, he should act accordingly. Zeke merely offered a gentle smile. To him, those words sounded as sweet as a melody. The minister, his temper barely contained, decided it was wiser to leave before things got out of hand. Still, this would not be his last appearance here. The man had instructed everyone to be looked after, despite always insisting that concern should only be shown for himself. Zeke approached Kai-chan, ready to mount and begin the journey home. The veterinarian noticed that his words had reached her, and it seemed likely she would give them careful thought. Thoughts of leaving the country in search of a better life often crossed his mind, yet bonds with people like them kept him rooted where he was. From this perspective, Life here doesn't seem so bad after all. Suddenly, Kai-chan spotted something in the distance and hurried off in that direction. I asked Kai-chan to stop, since the capital lay in a completely different direction. Upon spotting the creature, she quickly assumed it was a dog. Wounded, he offered his gratitude for her kindness and care. Shallow cuts and bruises marked his skin, but nothing posed a real threat. With a quiet apology, he warned that the treatment might cause some discomfort. For a medical examination, traces of poison appeared in the creature's blood. The realization dawned that ogres had attacked it. The poor animal whimpered softly, suffering in silence. Confidence filled him, certain she would be all right, especially in the care of a skilled doctor. A single injection would be enough to chase away the pain. The veterinarian calmly asked the animal to stay still. His gaze lingered on her coat, clean and soft, evidence of careful grooming. How could such a well-cared-for creature end up in a place like this? Meanwhile, Kai-chan noticed something unusual. Towering monsters emerged before her, their menacing presence making it clear to the boy that she was their intended prey. The boy could not comprehend why those monsters were chasing after the girl, since they had no intention of devouring her. Zik urged them to stop, yet his pleas fell on deaf ears. Preferably, he would avoid bringing them harm if circumstances allowed. The monsters, however, maintained their relentless ferocity. Zeke stood firmly opposed to this course of action. The monsters crashed to the ground. 2 healing abilities. At first glance, they might seem of little use, but in moments like these, they proved invaluable. The teacher offered his thanks before vanishing from sight. A thought crossed his mind. Perhaps this creature was lost. After all, it was a monster, wasn't it? It almost seemed as if it was trying to communicate something. Convinced she was fine, he chose not to dwell on the details. Gathering his belongings, he set off for home with Kai-chen by his side. Announced that S had been dismissed. He inquired about our reasons. According to the ruler, the minister reported that Zekit had been spending enormous sums, far beyond what was necessary. Livestock, after all, are simply animals raised to be slaughtered and eaten. Anyone allocating such vast resources to treating these creatures only causes harm rather than benefit. Though Zekit justified his actions as concern for health and the environment, the ruler maintained that if livestock were lost, a handful of newborns would suffice as replacements. The Lord believed that by letting him go, unnecessary expenses would be reduced, and the freed resources could be invested in the kingdom's growth. The man agreed with this reasoning, and the king shared their view. They asked the boy if he had anything to add. Considering the situation, the boy simply offered a heartfelt apology. He clarified that animal husbandry is far more complex than the minister suggests. Without proper care and supervision, productivity can quickly plummet or even disappear entirely as diseases spread. In addition, the protagonist shoulders the responsibility of overseeing the combat monsters deployed by the national army. Taming the inherent ferocity of these hexen beasts calls for specialized techniques. Without them, the nation would face severe casualties and irreparable material losses. The minister noted that, although Zeke might be unaware, a powerful magical device was recently developed for this very purpose. News of this invention had yet to reach the young man himself. This training device possesses such overwhelming power that merely wearing it allows the user to instantly bring any magical or tamed creature under their control. In other words, as long as someone holds this tool, Zika becomes completely powerless. Outrage simmered within him, for these objects turned animals into mere things. To continue ignoring their feelings and dignity would eventually lead to disaster. Mr. suspected that he was delirious, while the king dismissed his words as nonsense. Zeke must answer for the harm he has brought upon the nation, as well as his endless false boasts about his abilities. Yet, recognizing Zeke's service, the king is prepared to show him the measure of mercy that he rightly deserves. Seated on the shore of the reservoir, he let out a heavy sigh. Every effort had been made to honorably step into his father's role, yet with the arrival of the new king, the world seemed to have lost its senses. In these troubled times, Kai-chan did her best to offer comfort. The protagonist realized that animals are not objects to be discarded, but living beings with emotions and hearts, capable of lifting the spirits of their friends in difficult times. Just then, Kai-chan playfully pushed him into the water, and Zeke, smiling, graciously acknowledged her victory. Suddenly, the young man caught sight of something unusual. She stepped into view, her beauty striking him in that instant. Drawing closer, she confessed how much she had missed him and expressed her heartfelt gratitude. Her name is Tiffany, though she prefers to be called simply T. She agreed to visit his home. After introducing himself, the young man's name left a pleasant impression on her. He suspected that this was the very same puppy he had once rescued. His hunch proved true. Over the years, she had transformed into a true monster. Farewell. The creature I intended to save was just an ordinary puppy, not a remarkable girl like her. In response, T firmly disagreed. Only when he himself transformed into a puppy did he finally believe her. He wondered aloud if perhaps she was some kind of monster, since he had never heard of a creature able to transform into a human. Offended by the suggestion, she quickly assured him that she was certainly no monster. The young man turned out to know nothing about the divine beasts. She patiently explained that these beings had existed since ancient times, wielding power rivaling that of the gods. Above them all reigned the Lord of the divine beasts, commanding their incredible might. As the daughter of the Lord of divine beasts, she arrived with an invitation for him. The news left Zek utterly stunned. Naragma, she explained, was a land of glistening waters, endless green fields, and roaming beasts, ruled by the Lord of divine beasts. This realm flourished under his watchful care and wisdom, the very same kindness he extended to the mysterious creature they had encountered along their journey. In his confessions, he openly admits his limitations. Still, when she asks for help, he offers his support without hesitation. Newly exiled, he finds himself in need of a caring gesture, which arrives at just the right moment. The timely kindness lifts her spirits. With that, Zeke packs Nerog's belongings. Her paw brushed gently against his hand. Light radiated from his body as he realized the transformation. The girl calmly declared that the agreement had been fulfilled. Forming a pact with the divine beast would unlock its hidden power and grant unimaginable strength. Should any questions remain, this was the moment to ask. Zek understood everything. The moment to pack up had arrived. Tai lounged comfortably on his bed, casually wishing everyone a good night, which only served to further irritate the protagonist. She suggested they spend the night together, yet the idea left him completely indifferent. She quietly invited Kai-chek to spend the night together. Aryets arrived at the farmer's home to bid farewell. Zik admitted he would miss them, though staying in this country was no longer an option for him. The farmer, wary of the authorities, assured Zik they would manage as long as he looked after himself. With gratitude, the boy thanked him. Pan and Tiffany were locked in a disagreement, their voices subtly clashing. The owner remarked on the excellent company he was surrounded by, assuring that there was no need for concern. The protagonist offered an apology for the commotion. Decisions settled in his mind, he made his way toward the door. The room buzzed with an argument about a matter that involved him directly. Pausing, The young man asked if T had said anything. The girl assured him that nothing significant had happened. Yet faintly, he caught the sound of another voice in the background. Unfazed, he ignored the commotion and quietly started to gather his things. Traveling at Kaya-chan's impressive speed, the journey would still stretch over 5 days. The road ahead promised to be a long one. Someone suggested adding a bit of fun to their journey. But suddenly, something set Kai-chan off. The main character struggled to grasp what had provoked her sudden anger. Meanwhile, in the distance, a mysterious figure began to emerge. At first, it seemed to me like a person stood there, but T quickly assured me it was nothing more than a harp. An A-class monster stood in their path. The girl felt certain it was best to avoid it altogether. Yet the veterinarian's gaze betrayed a different intention. Kai-chan stood before her. Lately, the number of wounded monsters had noticeably increased. A word of caution escaped his lips as he urged vigilance. The boy noticed her injury and moved to examine it. Yet with nimble grace she evaded his attempt. He made up his mind to strike. Silk cast a sleep spell upon her. Unwavering in his belief that everything would turn out fine, he moved with a calm steadiness. Tiffany couldn't help but wonder why he bothered to lend her a hand at all. In response, the young man simply said that he was a doctor. Besides, the blame lay not with these monsters, but with the demon lord's curse that had driven them to madness. Wrapping her arms around him, she found herself face to face with the very Zeke she had always admired. With spirits soaring like this, even Harpy herself would find it impossible to resist. The protagonist quietly asked her to hold back from saying anything unnecessary. He explained that a powerful curse had been placed on the monsters, which made taming them nearly impossible. Yet, he recalled how he still cared for them back in the kingdom. The young man went on to clarify that breaking the curse was a complicated and lengthy process, requiring patience and time. Without warning, Bee rushed over to Zeke, wrapped him in a tight embrace, and confessed her feelings. Zeke stood frozen, caught completely off guard by her sudden honesty. Astonishment washed over him as he realized he had defeated a monster of such a high level, especially since he hadn't even been aware of possessing such strength. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that the contract would amplify his power so dramatically. The memory of forging the agreement just the previous evening lingered in his mind. Meanwhile, the harpy kept declaring her love to him over and over. From this, Zeke deduced that she could speak after all. Tai then explained that his abilities had advanced to the point where he could now understand their language. The realization struck him that all of this was merely part of the agreement. Tiffany acknowledged the situation, attributing the outcome to his unique abilities. Despite her reassurances, a lingering sense of doubt remained within him. Pressed between them, Kai found himself abandoned as they announced their intention to leave him behind. This turn of events was completely unacceptable to little Kai. Kaya-chan was utterly smitten with him, yet her feelings seemed to slip right past his notice. After an awkward misunderstanding, he politely asked her to stop. Then, in an unexpected moment, the true meaning behind her words finally dawned on him. Indeed, she was a monster too, after all. Tears welled in Kai-chan's eyes as he confessed his lie to her, to leap so recklessly into someone's arms. Clearly, his fascination with mammals had gotten the better of him. Realizing his fondness for her breasts, he pressed even harder without thinking. In response, he asked her not to make things more complicated. This only caused Kai-chan's irritation to grow. Attempting to clarify the misunderstanding, he assured her that she had misinterpreted his words. Despite the passage of years, she remained the most important person in his life. The words slipped from his lips, Kai Chen, please, as if spoken by someone else. Until this moment, the thought of ever addressing her in such a way had never even crossed the main character's mind. Suddenly, he realized they had already arrived at their destination. Zeke smiled and insisted it had to be a joke, certain there were still several days left on their journey. Yet before him rose the entrance to Naragma, the imposing gates of Makuni. Without hesitation, they arrived right on time, still puzzled by what she had been talking about. Upon glimpsing the divine beast, the villagers realized that Lady Tai had returned. Nicole had met Kenneth Doubts before, but now she stood before him as a true princess. News of the abundant harvests in the outside world flowed from her lips as she arrived, accompanied by a human physician. Introducing himself calmly, the stranger immediately drew the townsfolk's attention. Recognition sparkled in their eyes as they realized this must be the very savior foretold by the divine beast. Though no one in this village had ever seen him before, he appeared unmistakably human, and an air of mystery surrounded him as a creature trailed quietly by his side. A flicker of fear crossed his face as he worried he might have said something wrong. Tiffany quickly reassured him, explaining that everything was fine. The group was simply a bit flustered, unaccustomed as they were to having people around. Understanding their caution comes easily to him. Humans once hunted beast folk, driving them into the deepest corners of the forests. A response like this comes as no surprise. He calls for Miss Tiffany. Beforehand, Zeke apologized for his reaction, believing it perfectly natural for an outsider to feel that way. At that moment, Miss Tiffany approached him. Delicious apples filled her basket, and she offered one to the princess, who gladly accepted the treat. Zeke also found himself enjoying the apple immensely, and the girl could tell he wouldn't mind having another. Since they had plenty of apples and their shop was just nearby, Tiffany cheerfully dashed off with the princess by her side, while the boy called out for them not to rush too far ahead. A horse-drawn cart nearly ran them over as they crossed the path. Chan managed to catch the girl just in time, while the main character soothed the startled horse. Carefully, he gathered the scattered teeth from the ground. The girl appeared unharmed and offered him a grateful nod. After making sure she was all right, the young man relaxed. Around them, security guards had already started to gather. The girl assured everyone she was unharmed. One of the guards then inquired about the man's motives for attempting to run over the divine beast. Orders were given to take him to the castle, where both the man and his horse faced execution. Yet Zeke intervened, halting the grim fate that awaited them. A veterinarian soon examined the horse and discovered a sprain and an inflammation in its hoof. They asked him whether the owner regularly trimmed the hooves. Walking on cobblestones with such injuries was like treading barefoot on broken glass. The man apologized, and Zeke decided it was time to come up with something new. First aid had been administered, ensuring he would be fine on the journey home. The owner simply needed to take better care of his horse from now on. After receiving what he needed, the man promised to be more cautious in the future. Yet all of this happened unintentionally, so Zeke pleaded for mercy instead of anger. Tiffany remains certain that he will never allow something like this to happen again. The protein enthusiasts believed the girl should not have rushed toward them so suddenly. She quickly apologized for her recklessness. Just as Mrs. T had predicted, Zek offered his support and helped her to her feet. Speechless in the face of such kindness, he struggled to find words worthy of his gratitude for both his own rescue and that of his horse. The guard, still reeling from the chaos, openly admitted his astonishment, but his thanks for the timely intervention were heartfelt. Gratitude shone in the young woman's eyes as well, her relief and appreciation unmistakable. Relief washes over her as she learns everyone approves of Sick. Hope stirs within, wishing that as time passes, they will grow closer and forge a true friendship. Kai Chen did not appreciate this at all. With unmistakable determination, she declared that Zeke belonged to her alone. The princess had thrown down the gauntlet. She reminded everyone that he was an important guest and instructed the maids to treat him with the utmost courtesy. One of the finest guest rooms had been prepared and left ready for his comfort, should he wish to stay. Before departing, she assured him that they would meet again later, a promise that caught both him and Kai Chen completely off guard. Having ushered them into the room, she assured them of her willingness to help with anything they might need. The revelation that T was truly a princess left him awestruck. The discovery added an exciting new layer to his perception of her. With T's approval secured, curiosity arises about how the rest of her family perceives him. After all, his talents seem to stop at medicine. Kai-chan remains unimpressed. In her eyes, Zeke stands out as seasoned, thoughtful, and undeniably impressive. No matter where he goes, a warm welcome awaits him. Although she feels little affection for that dog, she knows exactly what she is witnessing. Delight sparked within him upon discovering her feelings. The moment they finally spoke left him quietly content. The thought crossed his mind that this was what people called international friendship. Gathering his courage once more, Zeke confessed how glad he was to have her by his side. Meanwhile, she found herself reflecting on the matter of race. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help pierced the air. Drawing on their talent for sensing others, the group moves swiftly ahead. After crossing 2 rooms, they notice 2 men climbing through a window, dragging a large bag behind them. Instantly, together with Kai Chen, he heads straight toward the scene. The kidnappers gathered their courage and dared to abduct the girl. The kidnappers had no idea who stood before them. Confident in their own secrecy and skilled at blending into the shadows, they anticipated no trouble. Accustomed to such scenarios, Zeke tracked them effortlessly, following their trail with practiced ease. The group soon realized his remarkable skills as a tracker, but he simply smiled and claimed it was all thanks to his medical expertise. Nappa's guest arrived accompanied by a fearsome beast. Offering his advice, he suggested that if the young man intended to ask a girl out, he should come up with a plan that was a bit less adventurous or risk frightening her away. The attackers lunged at him, but the hero reacted with lightning speed, paralyzing one of his foes on the spot. The other immediately recognized the display as a form of combat magic. He considered replying, yet decided against it. For now, silence seemed the wiser choice, and letting the girl leave felt right. Any further conversation could wait until another time. Neppa prepared to leap through the window with the girl when Kai Chen intervened, halting his escape. At that moment, Zeke wounded the girl. Draw closer to the kidnapper. He longed to catch a glimpse of his expression, but the man simply turned and walked away. With Nappa gone, the boys managed to slip away from his enchantments. The realization dawned on them that this was a transportation spell at work. Mastering this rare and intricate skill is a privilege reserved for the select few. An ordinary thief could never hope to achieve it. Lost in thought, he pondered the possible implications. Meanwhile, the girl signaled with a gesture, reminding him that she was unable to speak. With a hint of embarrassment, he apologized for forgetting, then gently asked if she was all right. The girl offered her thanks to Zeke, leaving him puzzled as to how she knew his name. The truth came to light that the young woman was, in fact, his employer. With calm poise, she revealed her true identity as the divine queen of beasts and expressed her gratitude to Zeke once again for saving her life. The announcement came that Mr. Zeke was now eligible for admission. Introducing herself as Sophia, The divine queen of beasts, she commanded a regal presence. Tiffany greeted her in return, her voice calm and respectful. Introducing himself once more, he offered an apology for his brusque behavior the night before. The queen gently suggested he relax and speak less formally. Tiffany echoed the sentiment, pointing out that they were almost friends by now. Sophia added, with a small smile, that in truth, things between them were far from unpleasant. She mentioned that there was still much left for them to discuss, but for now, she would keep it brief. Her wish was for Zeke to serve the country as the chief physician at the royal court. The young man accepted her decision with grace and dutifully obeyed the order. A sense of destiny washed over him as he realized his path would lead him to serve as the chief physician of the royal court. A realization dawned in his mind. He was standing before the head of the medical division. Only just having arrived at the institution himself, uncertainty lingered. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind, requesting that Master Aroa wait, as an audience with His Majesty awaited him. Upon entering the hall, he offered a quiet apology for interrupting and causing any inconvenience. A stranger's hand flashed by. When asked about his identity, Tai explained that this was Master Zoroa, the most distinguished of all physicians. At that moment, Zeke understood. The chief medic now stood before him. Eyes narrowed with anger, a fierce glare was directed at the main character. He inquired about the doctor's intentions. The chief physician addressed her directly, explaining that as the current royal court physician, he could not stand by and do nothing. Regardless of the princess's wishes, entrusting such an important position to a complete newcomer who had just arrived struck him as sheer madness. The maid found his remarks rather blunt, yet the queen remained calm and assured everyone that there was no cause for concern. Words always carry weight, so Zeke's candidacy for the assistant position would be considered. Nevertheless, Sorrow harbored doubts about whether this man truly possessed the ability to handle such a role. It seems almost unbelievable that a man so plain and bald could hold such an important position, even with powerful figures backing him. If he turns out to be a spy from another country, it's only a matter of time before he gets caught in the act. Realization dawned that he was genuinely humiliating this young man. The boy's eyes never left his body, silently analyzing how his weight shifted and settled. Quietly, the main character requested permission to examine his right hand. Confusion clouded his face as he wondered why he needed to show his hand. Zick calmly explained that he'd noticed a nervous twitch in his fingers. Suspecting an injury, the man offered to examine the wound, hoping to help. However, with unwavering resolve, Zorur refused. As the chief physician of the court, he could handle such a minor cut on his own. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he spotted the cut, the very wound he had inflicted on the bandit with a scalpel the previous evening. The guards found themselves bewildered by the mention of bandits, unable to recall seeing anything suspicious or understanding the matter at hand. Later, it became clear that the Queen had chosen to keep this information hidden, hoping to prevent widespread panic. She recounted how, just last night, a bandit had slipped into her chambers. Danger had come close, but Zeke arrived in time to save her. The guards listened in stunned silence as the truth settled in. The mysterious bandit who had invaded her room was none other than Master Zoro himself. Others quickly dismissed the idea, brushing it off as nonsense. A scar like that, they argued, proved nothing and could belong to any common rogue. Permission was requested to draw a small sample of his own blood, with the hope that testing it would reveal whether it matched the blood found on the scalpel. The guards gazed in amazement, never having imagined such a thing could be done. Fear gripped him as the Queen silently willed him to stay docile. The master attempted to make a run for it, but Zeke responded in a flash, rendering him motionless with swift paralysis. Formalities are wasted on villains. Relief washed over Tiffany as she realized he had come to her rescue once more. Pride warmed the princess's heart as she watched Zeke. Striding into the castle, he wasted no time in unmasking the villains and bringing them to justice. He then gently asked her to climb down from his back and offer an apology to the queen. With hesitation, she replied that it no longer mattered. Court physicians from every corner of the country gathered together. From behind, a voice explained that doctors cared not only for people's health, but also for the well-being of livestock. This revelation startled Zeke, since his work had always been solitary, commending his reputation. The young woman mentioned that he had been chosen as their mentor. With polite courtesy, she asked if she might introduce herself. Introducing himself as Zeke Vettel, he mentioned his acquaintance with Ari, the new chief of arts medicine. Life shifted dramatically for him in an instant. Although some townspeople may not have welcomed the stranger, he was determined to do whatever it took to truly belong among them. He had asked that anyone with difficulties let him know, and promised to do everything in his power to help. To Zeke, the request sounded rather pitiful. Regret gnawed at him for not coming up with something more clever. No, at that time, there simply hadn't been an opportunity. A sudden surprise then caught him off guard. An exceptionally warm welcome greeted him, leaving a pleasant impression, for such genuine hospitality had been the last thing he expected. Word of his feats had already spread, and everyone was well aware of his accomplishments. News of rescuing both the princess and the divine queen of beasts had already spread throughout the entire city, captivating the attention of every inhabitant. The boy realized his predecessor had been much the same. It dawned on him that he hadn't always been a bad person. The girl reassured me, asking that I not worry about anything. They promised to do everything in their power to support him. Deep in thought about where to begin, I was interrupted when someone burst into the room. Anxiety etched across their face and urgently announced that trouble had found them. Confusion clouded their faces as they struggled to grasp what had just happened. Their attention was drawn in a single direction, and there, advancing toward them, surged a horde of demonic creatures. The sight of so many dragons took everyone by surprise. At that moment, Zeke realized exactly who stood before him. Fagans swooped over to them, calling him brother. The boy asked why they had come to this place. Their search began when he vanished, and none of them wished to continue their work without their brother by their side. Astonishment filled him upon discovering that dragons could speak, one of his newfound and unfamiliar abilities. The girl recoiled in fear at the sight of these creatures, but the protagonist quickly offered reassurance, explaining that he cared for the dragons at his home. The thought crossed the protagonist's mind to offer shelter to these dragons. Majestic winged creatures, they seemed perfectly suited for riding, and he felt certain they would prove invaluable for journeys through the skies. The idea delighted him, and they agreed at once. An ancient kingdom once flourished in Zitza. The ruler inquired whether the new crown pleased him, and if it was truly worthy of his majesty. The minister assured him that, adorned in such splendid regalia, the ruler's renown would spread across the world. The monarch himself concluded that this approach proved far more advantageous than spending money on animals. Certain that once the people beheld the crown, they would be utterly captivated, he felt pleased with his choice. Noting that it was already late and time to depart, the man asked if the flying dragon had been prepared. Meanwhile, a servant struggled to relay some important news to them. News of the flying dragon's absence left Becca utterly stunned. Since early morning, search parties had been scouring the entire city for them. Fear gripped the pair, aware that without their flying dragon, Attending the gathering was impossible. With no other choice, they set out, some on horseback, others riding in the carriage. Suddenly, one of the horses lashed out, striking the king squarely in the face. An apology to the master became necessary. The rest of the horses behaved in much the same way. As soon as Zik departed, their existence faded from memory. They went unfed and were completely neglected. Under such circumstances, a horse cannot perform any work. In such a condition, harnessing them to a wagon was out of the question, let alone saddling them. The king found himself utterly at a loss, unable to imagine what to do next. With no other options left, they sought the aid of King Roguel. In this predicament, their only recourse was to use the carriage. The king's temper flared at the mere thought of relying on horses to draw it, feeling as though he were being reduced to a mere servant running alongside. Sensing the king's displeasure, the minister quickly stepped in with reassuring words and a promise to find a better solution. Calm gradually returned to the monarch as he realized the situation was not as humiliating as it had first appeared. They had no choice but to leave, since nothing in this place held any meaning for them anymore. Now the only thing left was to find a way out. Offering an apology for his lateness, the king from Geta Mugu Gula stepped into the room. The attendees quickly observed his delayed arrival, prompting him to explain that some difficulties had impeded his timely entrance. The majority of the agenda had already been discussed. Was there anything else he wished to add? There was no need for concern. His name would appear in the protocol at the end, acknowledging that King Roguel had graciously reported his readiness to serve. Laughter rose among those gathered. Who would have thought such a solemn assembly of kings, yet he appeared to consider himself the most important one present. The laughter continued, with Roguel certain that Z was the cause of it all. Zik and Kai-chan found themselves in a spacious new house, carefully chosen for them by Sophia. The generous interior offered plenty of room, making it easy for everyone to settle in comfortably. Kai-chan took genuine delight in their new surroundings. It turned out the boy had gotten in touch with Miyata, a revelation that genuinely surprised Kai-chan. He reached out by writing her a letter and waited for her reply. No matter how much she despised him, she was still his sister and deserved to be informed about his life. Meanwhile, Zeke decided to start by tidying up. A sense of unease washed over Mint as she received a letter from her brother. Fury seethed within him as the sting of disgrace gnawed at his sense of honor. All blame for this humiliation settled squarely on that cursed Zeke. The minister made an attempt to calm him down. Taylor believed that Gaiman also shared the blame for the failure, since he had not made a proper offer. That was the reason he had been approached in the first place. News came that Lady Mint awaited a meeting with him. The ruler, puzzled, could not recall the name. The minister gently reminded him it was the same person he had already mentioned. The brilliant mage invited to the court, Mint Wheatle, an arch. Roguel recalled that this was the very same girl. The minister had mentioned she was only 15, yet she had already graduated from the Academy of Magic with honors. Such prodigious talent appeared only once in a century. She was a true genius among mages. The king wondered why such a distinguished figure chose to enter a public contest. He felt certain that the reason was his own growing popularity. The minister wholeheartedly agreed. Now, other nations would surely take note of their country. The thought crossed his mind that she had come to pay her respects even before formally stepping into her position. That notion certainly pleased him. In return, he heard that he would have to manage on his own. After bidding him farewell, she turned and walked away. For a moment, he held her back, intent on uncovering what she truly meant. His fingers brushed her shoulder, and an icy chill instantly froze his hand in place. Worry for him gnawed at her. Mint had delivered a strict warning. No one was to lay a hand on her, except for her brother. Yet out of nowhere Rogvel arrived, a brother she never saw coming. Long ago, Ariam, once a veteran who had been exiled from his homeland, tended to the animals in place of Zihu. The lady realized that the person before her was her own sister. All she wanted was to work alongside her brother. Without him here, there was no reason for her to stay. She wished her good luck and prepared to leave. He requested that she remain and wait, explaining that her help was urgently needed for the honor of their country. Unaware of what he truly meant, Mint slipped away without delay. Anger simmered within her toward her family, with particular resentment directed at Z. Anticipation bubbled within her as the moment to reunite with her brother drew near. Suddenly, an unexpected obstacle appeared in her path. People noticed her presence and assumed she was just an ordinary person. The order came for her to halt, and voices demanded to know her identity. Mint pleaded for permission to pass, but her words fell on uncomprehending ears. Requesting permission to pass, she explained her desire to see her brother. Everyone stood in fear of her magic. Mip prepared to unleash her power, but suddenly someone intervened and brought her to a halt. Her brother, whom she hadn't seen in ages, stood before her. An overwhelming longing had built up during their time apart. He asked what had brought her there and showed genuine interest in how her studies were going. The young woman explained that graduating from school marked the beginning of adulthood for her, especially the challenge of finding a job. At the same time, she admitted she had just resigned from her position as a court magician. The reason behind her actions remained a mystery to him. After all, he had gone to great lengths to secure her a prestigious position. She longed for nothing more than to be by his side. Expecting her temperament to remain unchanged would have been foolish. In the past, she frequently treated him with a careless disregard. Now, a delicate blush colored her cheeks. Kai-chan explained that growing older had transformed her. What was once simple childishness had now matured into something more. These words left the young girl feeling awkward and embarrassed. Believing she despised him, she later apologized for taking so long to admit the truth. Yet after he left the country, the girl realized that if she continued to hide her feelings, people might misunderstand her for the rest of her life. She resolved to confess that from this day forward, and for all time, her heart would belong to her brother. His answer came softly, confessing he loved her as well. Relief washed over Mint, as her feelings found a match in his heart. Just then, Kai-chan turned to her, sharing that Zeke harbored feelings for Mint too. Responding with a small smile, Mint pointed out that if Miss Lizard hadn't heard, Zeke truly did have affection for her. Prudinginus then suggested they head back home and apologized for any trouble he might have caused. The guard reassured him, saying there was no problem if she truly was his sister. When the boy invited him to stop by his place, the girl accepted the offer without hesitation. Her stay as a guest in this country left everyone around them quite surprised. Relief washed over him when Lady Sophia agreed, knowing she would not have to live under his roof. Observing that the siblings lived together under one roof seemed entirely ordinary. Still, Zeke believed she had become her own independent person. She gently disagreed with him, noting that it had been a long time since she last breathed in his scent. In a quiet confession, she admitted her feelings and told him that she loved him. Once more, she realized how much she still needed him. At last, the enchanting glow faded away. Zeke assumed the magic had run its course, yet the girl remained certain. The journey was not over. He guessed that these creatures were not true monsters. Mint concluded they were nothing more than skilled shadow puppets. Neither physical attacks Nor sleep, nor paralysis could affect them. Zeke realized the only way to win was to defeat the sorcerer controlling them. In the end, his suspicions proved correct. Mister watched him intently, captivated by the unfolding scene. The sorcerer had never anticipated such a twist. His shadow puppet was supposed to be untouchable, immune to both blows and spells. Bewilderment clouded his mind as he struggled to comprehend how this boy had managed to damage his creation. With nothing but ordinary thread, he quietly stitched her wound closed. The mage possessed the power to conjure countless shadow puppets, filling the room with their eerie forms before tearing them apart one by one. A flicker of fear crossed the sorcerer's face after the paralysis took hold. The realization that the young man had uncovered his secret left him shocked, especially since his telepathic message had been flawlessly concealed. Calmly, the protagonist offered a piece of advice. If someone intends to hide an adult, concealing the heartbeat is crucial. It truly is basic. The antagonist could only retort by calling him an idiot. Bound tightly to the tree, Zeke pressed him for answers, demanding to know the identity of their elusive visitor. Mint was certain that this time a confession would be inevitable. Now he stood before her as a loyal servant, bound to answer every question with unwavering honesty. An unsettling aura hung around Zik. At her command, he began to explain the reason behind his attack on her brother. The reply came. The king and the prime minister had ordered Zeke's assassination. The revelation struck the protagonist to her core. She realized it was them who had driven him from the country. Exile might have been something I could accept, but murder was a different matter altogether. Zeke turned to me and quietly asked if he had truly done something so terrible. The decision settled in my mind. Forgiveness simply felt impossible, so I vanished without a word. Over time, the king's desire to bring the girl back grew stronger. The minister, however, could not forget that it was these very people who had treated Z in such a way. The belief took hold that Gaiman was on his side. Yet Gaiman denied any such support, firmly insisting that retrieving the girl would require concessions. The only thing expected of the king was a show of willingness to welcome the exiles back. At the first sign of opportunity, however, he would quietly hire an assassin to eliminate them. The minister believed the ruler was far too pessimistic, but the king disagreed. In fact, he found the idea of hiring a mercenary not only fitting, but was almost tempted to put the plan into action immediately. At last, Mrs. Mint appeared before them. The minister, clearly troubled, revealed that the murderer had already entered their kingdom by the time they banished Zik, and the king confirmed this information. The girl grasped the situation instantly. She explained that despite all their attempts, the mercenary they had hired failed to complete the mission. They refused, claiming it was all a mistake. Concern for the fate of Myant and Zik weighed heavily on them. Yet Myant understood there was no changing these people. Sooner or later, they would answer for everything they had done to her brother. Their pleas for her to stop came with offers of money and land, but nothing could sway her resolve. In the end, the castle became encased in solid ice. The brothers insisted that she would not take their lives, yet warned that any future attack on him would seal their fate. From the king's remarks, Mr. Ast offered polite praise for the castle's new decorations. Yet, with a hint of sorrow, he confessed that he had grown weary of it all. Glancing over her shoulder, she searched the crowd for any sign of him. His voice called out to her, drawing her attention. He explained that the open-air bath was something he had crafted himself during his free time, purely for his own enjoyment. Although his schedule is no longer as demanding as it once was, fatigue still finds its way to him. Mint noted how the water in this place feels nothing short of heavenly. Unaware of the true nature of divine energy, he watched as Tiffany, already prepared for a swim, slipped confidently into the water beside him. The princess apologized for interrupting him, but admitted that spending time with Zeke felt truly wonderful. Introducing herself, the woman immediately sparked recognition in the girl. It was the very same person who had come to her brother's aid. News of her had already reached her ears. This must be the older sister. Delight shone in the young woman's eyes as she was introduced. The boy watched the warmth between them with quiet surprise. Chan and the queen spotted them immediately. A spark of anger flared in Kai-chan, fully aware of his fondness for such sights, especially when it came to women's bodies. Sophia made up her mind to join their group. The other boys soon caught on and eagerly wanted to join in as well. The meaning behind it all remained a mystery, leaving her lost in confusion. Amazement lit up his face as he leaned in, eager to learn what had truly transpired. Humans and monsters relaxed together in the warm bath, laughter mingling in the steamy air. She longed for a world where everyone could share such genuine joy. Mint silently agreed with her, aware that true happiness could never flourish as long as the demon lord continued to exist in their world. The creatures remained subdued under her brother's control, yet the demon lord's curse still lingers. As long as the demon lord draws breath, the war will never cease. Approaching the demon lord, she suggested they share a bath as a way to get to know each other better. Mitt bristled with anger, insisting that such a thing could never happen. The servants gathered every mage involved in the matter, yet the overwhelming strength of the magic at hand made the work incredibly difficult. Despite this, the minister dismissed all excuses and simply ordered that everything be completed by the week's end. Fortunately, no casualties occurred, though the surrounding structures suffered considerable damage. He realized that a larger budget would be necessary. Meanwhile, his criticism of Zik continued. Gaiman noted that his arrival had been perfectly timed. The cost estimate for repairing the castle and its surroundings had already been prepared. Lost in thought, the king requested silence from everyone present. Annoyed by Zeke's persistent behavior, the ruler now felt an urge to give him a stern reprimand. Understanding dawned on him, yet he remained firmly resolute when it came to his castle. Rogale saw this matter as his sole responsibility, determined to handle it alone. He requested to be left in peace until morning, and, in the meantime, asked for 10 different strategies on how to eliminate Seaport. Doubt clouded his thoughts. The servants reported that the owl was too cold to take flight, and all communication with the other stations had been cut off. Every salamander guardian had simultaneously slipped into hibernation. Even the watchful beast grew unruly in the bitter chill. Slick ice covered the ground before the main gate, turning each step into a struggle. A cracked water pipe had unleashed the mess. Amid the confusion, Eamon still couldn't piece together how events had unfolded so unexpectedly. As the doctor examined the young patient, he assured himself that the cold would subside by morning and promised to return the following day. The mother tucked her little one into bed and softly wished her a good night. Meanwhile, the doctor reflected on the importance of administering a vaccination and asked for the necessary preparations to be made. The woman expressed her heartfelt gratitude. With a lively tone, Tiffany announced that their activities for the day had come to an end. She cheerfully remarked that this had turned into a 3-person outing. This irritated Kai-chan, who firmly insisted that she was the one on a date with Sick. The princess brightened at the idea, deciding the situation would be entertaining. Tension grew as Kai-chan accused the princess of getting overly attached and suggested they ditch her. In response, the boy calmly asked them both to settle down. Carefree as ever, he enjoys himself, basking in the newfound sense of calm that now envelops everything. The scent of blood lingered in the air. Zeke paused, his steps faltering as surprise flickered across his face. Before them sprawled a dragon, battered and gravely wounded. The dragon still clung to life, unable to discern who stood before him, a human or an elf's companion. The stranger introduced himself, calmly stating he knew nothing of elves, so it seemed unlikely he was one of them. The teacher's surprise was evident when that unfamiliar voice reached her ears. Z admitted it was him, though there was something odd in his manner of speaking. Curious, Kai-chan asked what had happened to him, prompting Tiffany to explain that he was in conversation with a dragon. The dragon gazed in astonishment, having never encountered a human capable of communicating with it before. Zik suggested postponing their conversation as his wounds demanded immediate attention. Curiosity sparkled in her eyes as she wondered aloud if a human could heal a dragon. The main character explained that such a thing was entirely possible, pointing out that even dragons sometimes required first aid in situations like these. The dragon acknowledged the truth in those words, admitting he needed some time to recover. Curiosity lingered in his gaze as he wondered aloud why anyone would bother to help. Zeke responded with calm certainty, explaining that as a doctor, helping the wounded required no further justification. The monster fell silent, lost in thought for a brief moment. He asked Z for help. Just as Z was about to begin the treatment, someone suddenly approached him. They questioned him about his purpose there. This diamond dragon stood as proof of Master Elkus's triumph. The doctor asked Tai to collect as many leaves from the trees as possible. The stranger reminded them not to dismiss him. Tai replied that if the man was merely resting here, he should stop interfering with the treatment and leave. With irritation in his voice, he pointed out that one cannot treat an Elkus dragon slayer in such a manner. Death was well-deserved for him. Elkus had already drawn his bow, the arrow aimed with deadly precision. In haste, the dragon turned to Zeke and urged escape. The warrior's arrows could pierce even his diamond-hard scales. Arrows fly from my hands, yet he effortlessly tracks each one, never losing sight for a moment. Astonishment flickered across his face as he demanded to know who stood before him. Zeke calmly introduced himself as both a veterinarian and a doctor, emphasizing that he had already promised to take care of the treatment. Yet the enemy's patience snapped, interrupting him with anger and ordering the lie to stop, insisting there could not possibly be a veterinarian among them. Oblivious to the rain of arrows whistling past, the dragon urged retreat, warning that their lives hung by a thread. Zik remained utterly unfazed, merely commenting on just how incredibly irritable the boy seemed. After some time, he grew calm and quietly requested a moment of silence. Elkus assured him that he remembered everything, his face and even his name. The figure vanished from sight. Once more that the protagonist witnessed the extraordinary phenomenon of transportation magic, a feat far beyond the reach of ordinary sorcerers. The possibility that someone truly possessed such formidable power now seemed undeniable. No rival could compare to him on his own turf. He declared that he showed no mercy to those who caused trouble, dealing with them swiftly and without hesitation. Now, as the real confrontation began, he ordered his opponent to remain perfectly still and not make a move. Inquired about the progress of the treatment. Zeke carefully explored every possible way to offer further assistance. Still, he understood the situation was far from simple. After tending to the external wounds, the dragon's natural healing ability seemed expected to manage the remaining injuries. Even with the use of specialized skills, the healing process crawled at a frustratingly slow pace. Evidently, that scoundrel had enchanted his weapon with dark magic. The dragon found the situation exceedingly strange. Familiar as he was with many dragon hunters, never before had he witnessed anyone attempt to heal a dragon. Calmly, the sailor urged the dragon to relax and let the doctor handle everything. Realizing the doctor relied solely on human abilities to heal him, the dragon saw how inadequate this effort truly was. There lingered a question of whether the creature had genuinely offered another solution or simply tested him. Zeke explained that honesty had always guided him, and that he never hid his own limits. Apologetically, he admitted this was the best he could offer at that moment. The dragon refers to his need for sacred energy, believing it will be enough to amplify his magic. For the first time, Zika was enveloped by a surge of sacred energy, its force both overwhelming and awe-inspiring. The dragon, his gaze intent, explained that such power was a formidable kind of magic, and asked whether Zika was capable of using his healing abilities. Despite the dragon's confidence, the young veterinarian quietly admitted that words made everything sound simple, yet the reality was far from easy. Curiosity sparkled in Chan's eyes as she wondered aloud if he didn't already possess such magic. Guy explained that his abilities merely aided patients in healing on their own. True healing magic, on the other hand, stood in direct defiance of fate itself, restoring everything to its natural state. Besides, he had yet to grasp the lessons Mint had tried to teach him. A vibrant energy pulses within him, a force not born of chance, but shaped by a path marked by countless moments of healing. Each step along this journey has added strength to his soul. A moment of reflection revealed the source of such remarkable knowledge. It all stemmed from his spirit and the skillful work of his hands. Careful monitoring of your savings ensures everything remains under control. Enhanced conditions breathe new energy into the daily rhythm of the market, improving the quality of life for everyone involved. Although the outcome was far from perfect, Zik accomplished what many believed impossible by healing the wounds. Tiffany quickly noticed that he had earned the title of Dragon Healer and gained the unique skill, Divine Hand, evolving into the Doctor of 100 Beasts. A sense of happiness for him filled the air, even though at times her behavior struck him as a little too unsettling. Relief washed over him, seeing the dragon unharmed. The creature expressed its gratitude once more, acknowledging that his strength had saved its life. He replied that he had only done what needed to be done. Before finishing his sentence, he lost consciousness. Awakening in bed, realization dawned that he must have fainted. Memories slipped away, leaving only fragments behind. The crazed elf making his escape, his own hands tending to the wounded diamond dragon. Suddenly, Zeke's gaze fell upon the girl lying quietly at his side. The girl had regained her composure and was clearly relieved to see him unharmed. She admitted that fear had gripped her heart when Zeke suddenly lost consciousness. Now curious, he turned to her and asked who she was. Entering the room, she immediately realized her brother had regained consciousness. The sight before her struck a deep chord, shaking her to her core. In that instant, she understood that this country posed a threat not only to Tiffany, but to others as well. A thought darted through her mind. They must be hidden beneath layers of ice. Zik, meanwhile, remained certain she had completely misread the situation. After all, he didn't even know the alluring girl in question. Yet the intensity of his sister's emotions began to leave its mark on him too. Recognition washed over him as he realized it was Kai Chan standing before him. There was no doubt left. She truly was here. A cheerful laugh escaped her lips as she teased him, suggesting he had already forgotten her face. Raising the mirror to Kai Chan, Sophia revealed a reflection so changed that Kai-chan barely recognized herself. At that very moment, Queen Sophia stepped into the room, ready to explain everything. Through the evolutionary power of Zik, Chan took on a human form. Mint found herself puzzled, unable to grasp the full meaning of this transformation. Only a faint memory surfaced. T had once spoken of something similar. Many wondered if they truly understood the phenomenon of monster evolution. Mint grasped that it occurred when a monster gained strength by hunting and defeating other powerful beings. Yet Zeke recalled that Kai-chan never consumed monsters as food, a detail she herself confirmed. The queen clarified the matter, explaining that monsters draw energy from food much like others, but in truth, they absorb the magical power of their victims. Should they take in a significant amount of this magic, natural evolution might follow. The revelation came that her brother's magical power was the true cause of the evolution, and this fact could no longer be denied. Understanding dawned on Zeke. The dragon's words about an incredible force had pointed to this very magic. Queen Sophia explained that the contract she had forged with Tiffany made everything possible. Once he formed a contract with the divine beast, a surge of celestial energy flowed into him. The encounter with the dragon just yesterday had likely amplified that power even further. Understanding dawned that the forces at play were those of Vettel and Ari. The queen, her curiosity piqued, began to inquire further. The young woman explained that Vettel and Ari's clan had the unique ability to harness the energy of monsters they were connected with, treating it as if it were their own power. After seizing the divine energy and the might of the dragon, her brother underwent a profound existential transformation. From Queen Sophia's perspective, it seemed only natural that she, too, would change under the influence of such power. Meanwhile, Zeke and Kai-chan remained completely bewildered by the conversation, unable to grasp its meaning. Rising to the pinnacle of healing, he wielded a power that bordered on the divine. The sheer brilliance of his restorative abilities astonished even Zeke himself. Magic possesses a remarkable power, capable of mending any wound. This man treats people, animals, and even mystical creatures with equal skill. Such incredible strength must have been gained along the arduous path he traveled. Certain that this outcome is the inevitable result of all his encounters, he now holds the power to wield this strength as he sees fit. Yet the reason behind Kai-chan's genuine laughter remained a mystery to him. In truth, her joy sprang from the transformation she had undergone through Zeke's power. Now her body stood as the perfect vessel for him, and with this change she experienced true happiness. The thought crossed his mind that perhaps she had taken on a human form, yet her consciousness remained that of a lizard. Such a rough and awkward body hardly suited her. A modest and simple appearance would fit her far better. Indeed, the body she now possessed seemed much more appropriate. Irritation flickered in Kai-chan as she saw her brazen enough to question the body he had crafted for her. To prove her point, she boldly suggested settling the matter through combat, gathering all her courage for the challenge. At the same time, her efforts were directed at calming them both and urging reconciliation. The queen found these games amusing, while Zeke noticed something unusual about T's behavior. Curious, he asked if this was typical for T. She explained that she was an oracle. Unlike others, her spiritual bond with the heavens was especially strong because of her connection to the divine beasts. Through her, the will of the gods found its voice. Guy realized then that her words about the gods were not mere metaphors. They spoke of a real deity who truly existed in the heavens. With the new information, everything finally became clear to him. while you could continue living just as before. The reality was clear. He needed to choose his own path, while she, with quiet joy, would stay by his side. This realization left him deeply unsettled. Sophia expressed her gratitude for the respect he had shown her, but gently clarified that she was no longer a queen, just Sophia. She asked if she might remain by his side and watch over his adventures, explaining that otherwise she would only feel like a burden. Words escaped him as he searched for a reply. Just then, Tiffany stepped into the room, her face lighting up at the sight of him awake. Noticing her mother nearby, the girl sensed a quiet concern in her expression, guessing that she too had worried about his condition. Outraged, Elkus recalled the pitiful little man and ordered the army to assemble at once. They would launch an attack on the lands of those abominations without delay. One cautious soldier remarked that, even from their lord's perspective, the beast folk had done nothing wrong. The audacity in the soldier's tone only fueled Elkus's anger further. Grief still weighed heavily on him, mourning the loss of those dearest to his heart. The thought lingered. How could they have dared to disgrace him? Everything would reach its end for them in Irewakwa, where he would bring about their final destruction. Resolute in his intentions, he aimed to reduce their homeland to nothing but dust. The guard on duty glanced at the elves and inquired about the purpose of their visit. He suggested they might have come to admire the picturesque scenery of the village. The elder burst into the laughter, dismissing them as a pack of losers. Given the chance, he looked like someone who could bring an entire country to ruin in just half a day. Without realizing what he had just done, he stood there in a haze. The fact that he had emerged unscathed filled Elkus with genuine surprise. The opponents regrouped, preparing to launch their assault once more. The attack never landed. The enemies tore him apart before he had a chance. Such a fate was beyond anything his mentor could have imagined. Before turning to him and announcing that the village had vanished into the shimmering glow, they found themselves unable to take another step forward. They realized that this was the result of the outcast Zeke's magical power. Anticipating his arrival, the village had reinforced its defenses thoroughly. A clever move. The guard confirmed that, in fact, Master Zeke had visited just yesterday for another inspection. It turned out that everyone Zeke healed was blessed with a radiant glow that lingered for a while. Realization dawned that breaking through such a shield stood beyond possibility. Retreat seemed the only option, yet Elkus refused to yield. The hero, known for slaying dragons, never accepted defeat. Summoning his resolve, he called forth a demonic bathhouse for aid. Nothing will stand in their way. Elkus summons a beastly SS-class demon, determined to obliterate this cursed barrier and anything that dares block the path. Yet the events that unfold next catch even him completely off guard. Notice this. Both automatic resurrection and interception magic are spells of the same caliber. Clearly, this scoundrel possesses far greater strength than he ever imagined. Deciding to retreat for a moment and reconsider his strategy, he started to turn back. Suddenly, a diamond dragon appeared in his path and greeted him warmly. Recognition flashed in his eyes as he spotted the lizard he failed to finish off last time. Understanding dawned immediately. The dragon longed for a rematch. Clashing with Zeke's formidable power, the creature realized its intentions had been correctly interpreted. Fortune favored it, for destruction had been narrowly avoided before. The adversary suspected the dragon must have been granted some favor by that wretch. With silent agreement, both prepared for the long-awaited second duel. Confidence filled him as he imagined crushing his foe into tiny fragments. A plan formed in his mind to use the magical bow. Yet the sudden realization dawned. He possessed no arms. Regret washed over Megan as he realized his hands could no longer hold the bow. Trouble weighed down his thoughts, and he wondered how he would pierce the thick hide of the dragon now. In addition to his skill with a bow, he also commanded healing magic. Normally, wounds like these would pose no challenge, yet this time his spells failed to work. The dragon revealed the reason. Only divine power could bring about his recovery. Since Elkus had attacked Zeke, a messenger of the god himself, losing his blessing was an inevitable consequence. The opponent, utterly confused, asked for a clearer explanation. What he heard next left him stunned. Massive dragons began to materialize around Elkus. The diamond dragon clarified the situation, revealing that Elkus had, in essence, provoked the gods themselves. Desperation filled his voice as he pleaded for mercy, yet his cries fell on deaf ears and sealed his fate. A band of elves on an excursion suffered casualties due to a mysterious phenomenon. In response, he decided to request that they increase patrols. Tiffany, however, grew frustrated when Zeke started working again. She insisted that he should be taking a break instead. Zeke casually mentioned he was just looking through some ballots. To Tiffany, though, even that counted as work. Without hesitation, she took the papers from his hands and firmly insisted he take a break. Forced to give up even his meager salary after the secretary scolded him for taking an interest in sports, a dull monotony had already settled over him from the start. Kai-chan never imagined she would ever hear such a confession from Zeke. It was fortunate that someone remained by his side to help steer him in the right direction. Silently, the young man admitted to himself that he, too, longed for a wife like that. At that time, Kai-chan was absorbed in a book about guiding a husband to discover his own path. Just then, a memory surfaced for Tiffany. Not long ago, she discovered a cave right on the border and suggested they explore it together. The vast maze sprawls through the depths of the underground world known by its collective name. The source of the magical element saturates the atmosphere, serving as both the origin of magic and its energy. When this force settles deep within the earth, it crystallizes into a core, giving birth to a dungeon. The underground realm acts like a living creature. Though devoid of consciousness, it harbors a wild hunger for consuming humans. Within its depths, monsters, traps, and sinister magic take shape. Unchecked, these powers can break free from the dungeon's confines, threatening the world above. The origins of these creatures remain a mystery. Yet now, adventurers from every corner of the globe venture deep into the dungeons, determined to eliminate the peril lurking below. One such group engaged in battle with the monsters lurking underground. Curious about the situation, he inquired for an update. One of the men assured him that everything was generally under control, except for the uncle, who continued to shield the girl. He explained that protecting others was his duty, a role he accepted without hesitation. The girl, however, insisted that risking his own safety to such an extent wasn't necessary. The boys apologized to their leader for failing to disarm the trap, but she reassured them that the blame was not theirs alone. Reflecting on the situation, she admitted that the atmosphere in the dungeon was utterly repulsive. Yet, in her opinion, this was far from the worst they could have faced. When someone from the group suggested retreating, wary of the cave teeming with S-class monsters, the leader firmly dismissed the idea, determined to press on. Disobeying the royal order would spell disaster for her. The entire team risked losing the Prime Minister's trust, a blow they could not afford. She issued a swift command to switch roles. Now, she would take on the mantle of the tank, while he covered the retreat from behind. With a firm warning, she urged him to stay vigilant, confessing that she could sense magic beginning to stir beneath the surface. More and more monsters began to emerge. The boys realized they would have to start all over again. Despite this setback, the leader decided to press forward. Zeke, the princess, and Chang descended the narrow staircase made of bones, gradually swallowed by the darkness of the dungeon below. A tense atmosphere hung in the air, and even Zeke couldn't help but feel a flicker of unease. The princess, on the other hand, brimmed with excitement. This place felt like a dazzling amusement park to her. Certain they had reached the last segment of the video, she was convinced it had to be some sort of entertainment complex. Meanwhile, Kai-chan eyed the rope with suspicion, doubting its strength. The reply came confidently. Even if you fall into lava or take a hit, it's nothing to worry about. Zeke paused, curiosity flickering in his eyes as he wondered how all of this worked. The princess pointed out that monsters lurked here as well. Still, just like in the real world, Zeke found the idea of fearing them utterly laughable. Weapon poised and gaze cold, she seemed to wish for the man's end. A chill ran through Kai-chen at the sight. Yet Zeke remained unfazed, convinced that this was simply part of the attraction, nothing truly frightening at all. The princess laughed on, her voice lilting as she claimed he had startled her. The protagonist noticed the monster bore an injury. Considering his medical expertise, he surmised it might be special effects, makeup, or something similar. With practiced calm, he offered to take a quick look at the wound and provide assistance if permitted. After examining the creature, he cast a healing spell across its entire body to remedy every ailment. Suddenly, a sharp pain flared in his own back. The princess watched him with fascination, her gaze never wavering. At that moment, the beast realized for the first time that its name was Zeke. Gratitude filled Tor's heart toward her for waking him. Now, beset by a new need, he sought their help, for he was not alone in his plight. The dungeon's darkness held many others, all trapped by the same curse. The gravity of the situation struck Zeke for the first time. He had never imagined things were this dire. The leader and the girl from that block found shelter under his roof. With unwavering confidence, he promised her the unyielding protection of a tank and vowed he would not let any harm befall her. Struggling to keep up the brave front, the girl assured him she was fine, yet her breath came in shallow gasps, and crimson stains spread ever wider. The leader remembered a sign on the far wall, marking the path toward the heart of the dungeon. Seeing no better option, the girl agreed it was best to head that way. The leader inquired about the remaining magical energy available for an attack. The response came swiftly. Sabi had around 20% of her magic left, which could reach 30% with the help of the last recovery potion. Issuing her command, the girl instructed everyone to unleash everything they had at the enemy's front line the moment she gave the signal. She also pointed out that if they attacked in the usual way, the enemy would start dodging and employing evasive maneuvers. Her instructions leave no room for confusion. Eliminate the enemies while she buys them precious time. She suggests heading in the opposite direction to scatter their foes, promising to hurl every ounce of her strength into breaking through to the core as swiftly as she can. Once there, they will destroy it together. One team member can hardly believe she actually considers this a viable strategy. A happy ending for everyone sounds utterly impossible. She blamed herself, convinced she had underestimated the dangers lurking in the dungeon and had inadvertently put everyone at risk. The burden of responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. At that moment, another member of the group pointed out that her plan to blow up the wall once again lacked careful consideration. If she continued to rely on this strategy, The dungeon would hardly pose a challenge. Yet, had she considered the quality of the gunpowder or the strength of the walls? What materials had gone into their construction? Did she calculate the force of the explosion, keeping the peculiarities of the terrain in mind? In truth, she remained unaware of the core's properties. The leader grew weary of constantly noticing every single mistake she made. Confidence radiated from him as he trusted they would succeed in this mission. The boys shared a steadfast belief that they would all make it back alive. A deep sense of gratitude warmed the leader's heart toward them. Although an explosion had been discussed earlier, nothing happened this time. Everything remained calm and undisturbed. Surprise flickered across his face as he took in the bustling crowd. The adventurer failed to recognize him, introducing himself as nothing more than a humble doctor who had happened to pass by. He kept his true identity concealed. Clearly, he had endured more than his fair share of hardship, yet the Minotaur reassured everyone that he was fine. While the curse had certainly taken effect, karmic consequences had also played a role. Zeke observed that things were looking promising. In such a short time, the strength he now possessed was nothing short of extraordinary. Possessing remarkable versatility, he not only sustains the entire group, but also engages monsters in combat, or restores others with healing abilities. Gratitude filled their voices as they thanked Tim, acknowledging that he possessed all the qualities of a true mentor. Doubt and discomfort held him back from making a direct request. Everyone around him had already come to the conclusion that he was the Demon Lord. After meeting with Elizabeth and completing all the required paperwork, their status as official residents of Nero was finally confirmed. Surprise flickered across their faces upon discovering they hailed from the same hometown. Elizabeth's astonishment was equally clear. In that moment, the young woman realized she stood before the very veteran, Ari, whose stories she had so often heard. She confessed that he had become a true legend. Rumors whispered of his disappearance long ago, and the nation continued to feel the weight of his absence long after he was gone. The reply came, yes, it had been quite some time ago. These people, as it turned out, served in a unit directly commanded by the Prime Minister and had been dispatched to this dungeon by royal order. Sick realized they must have endured their share of hardships as well. The girl nodded in agreement, admitting she'd had enough excitement for one day. The nation's most prestigious S-class elite unit, known as the Twilight Dragon, in truth functioned as the Prime Minister's own private army. This time, their orders dispatched them into a hellish dungeon with no chance to prepare. Zeke reflected on the ordeal, realizing that this hell had truly tested them. Yet they emerged unscathed. Their survival owed entirely to the blessings of the gods. That moment proved just how hellish that place had been, yet relief and joy greeted their arrival as they finally reached safety. Zeke offered an apology, acknowledging that their manners had left much to be desired. She convinced herself this felt like a date, yet the boy quickly clarified that he had only dropped by for a brief visit before returning to the infirmary. Just then, the monstrous waiter appeared and apologized for the delay. Delight filled him as he realized how well everything was turning out for them. The monster believed their good fortune was the result of his own hard work. Elizabeth agreed, acknowledging that Cav had lifted the curse from all the monsters in the dungeon. Grateful for this, the monster offered everyone a place to work. Such generosity revealed the remarkable spirit of this kingdom. For all these blessings, their gratitude belonged to Lady Sophia. Bat felt embarrassed by the words she had spoken in the dungeon. The monster gently reassured her, explaining that everyone made such mistakes. Sik believed that yesterday's enemies could easily become today's friends. The past no longer mattered. What truly counted was the present moment. Elizabeth voiced her agreement with his view. Beastkin and even monsters share laughter in this place, all thanks to him. An atmosphere like this is truly remarkable. That warmth and unity convinced them to make this their new home. Delicious local food seemed to be the reason, he mused. The girl agreed, remarking on how truly wonderful the regional cuisine was. Just then, his friends called out to him. Elizabeth apologized, explaining she had to leave for a festive dinner awaiting her that evening. Catching sight of the scar on her cheek, the hero promised himself to make things right next time. The girl simply smiled, assuring him it was nothing to worry about. The scar had been with her for a long time. The people she had met left lasting impressions, cherished like hard-earned rewards in her memory. Ziku found it remarkable that this kind of scar required no healing at all. Curiosity led the young man to ask about the memories attached to it. At first, Elizabeth pretended to find the question too personal, as if it should have embarrassed her. When he apologized, the truth came out. She had only been teasing. In an effort to get to know each other better, she promised to share everything with him herself. Motivated by this, Zeke resolved to try even harder. Meanwhile, Kai-chan, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, realized he had let something slip once again. The dragon learned the man's name. The dragon nodded in agreement, realizing that this man might prove useful. The king made the decision to visit him in person. At that moment, the diamond dragon suggested warning the others, but the king dismissed the need for such caution. The diamond dragon then asked him to pause. The bladder suggested he hold on a little longer. The news struck hard. Their legendary dragon of twilight had left the land, a truth almost impossible to accept. The details remained unknown to her. She only heard that they had left for personal reasons. Anger flared within him at the thought that they had been entrusted with such a crucial mission, only to walk away so brazenly. Efforts were made to calm him, while the minister quietly inquired about the meaning behind it all. The bartender could only shrug in helpless confusion, admitting he had no answers. After all, those people served the prime minister. Surely he would be more informed than anyone else. The minister stood, bewildered, holding only a handful of resignation letters, while the true reason behind them remained shrouded in mystery. Determined to protect his reputation from any whispers about his subordinates fleeing, the ruler swiftly commanded that replacements be found at once. The group concluded that the king had no real understanding of the true situation within his realm. Not only did she and her friends leave the country, recently, requests have been pouring in for them to deal with escaped magical creatures and unattended pets roaming freely. Such troublesome incidents are becoming more frequent. After all, it is the government's responsibility to maintain order and safety, so they are eager to learn what measures the authorities plan to take. Realization dawned that both men truly deserved a reward. News of Zeke's involvement left the king astonished. The bartender quickly intervened, urging him to pause at once. As the crowd prepared to shout, they were urged to take their commotion outside. Lord Rogale was seething with anger at the audacity. How dare someone strike his leg so brazenly? Meanwhile, the bartender glanced outside in surprise, noticing snow beginning to fall, an unusual sight for this season. Before they even had time to react, everything had already unfolded. The king remained unaware that a far more dreadful and sinister event awaited him. When a dragon appeared before his very eyes, terror forced a startled cry from his lips. The reason behind the dragon's sudden appearance in the heart of the city remained a mystery to him, as did the purpose the guards served amid the turmoil. My first thought was that this village would have a veterinarian. However, locating one proved far more difficult than I had anticipated. The ice dragon scours the region for a man named Zeke, renowned throughout these lands as an expert of unmatched skill. Dear Tender concluded that the dragon posed a threat to him. The ice dragon realized with some regret that humans could not understand his language. Pausing to reflect, he wondered what action he should take next. Confusion spread as they failed to understand why the figures remained standing, and an immediate order was given to destroy them. The bartender quickly intervened, urging patience. Since the newcomers had caused no harm, starting a battle without reason seemed unnecessary. The minister could only sigh in resignation, pointing out that it was already too late to change the course of events. He then wondered aloud who would compensate the city for its losses if destruction ensued. Outrage swept through the people, for he was the one who collected their taxes. At last, the king came to realize that none of them served any real purpose. 420 warriors answered the call. At their helm stood none other than Lamab, the notorious leader of a ruthless band of mercenaries, predators as fierce as wolves. Among his ranks were brash adventurers and hardened cutthroats, each one seasoned by battles past. These warriors had once triumphed over ancient dragons themselves, their experience unmatched on any battlefield. The title of leader nearly sounded like an insult, yet such whispers behind his back meant nothing to him. The minister grew curious about where the king had found these men. The king explained that he had personally hired them, since Hyman had proved entirely useless. The minister quickly realized that as long as such ruthless mercenaries remained within the castle walls, any hope for security would vanish. What about their reward? The ruler merely shrugged, making it clear that compensation was not his concern. He was simply carrying out his duties. At last, the king turned to his distinguished guest, whose timely arrival brought relief, and asked him to deal with the monster without delay. Timob ordered him to kneel. The king failed to grasp what he meant. Peter gently reminded Neil of the importance of etiquette when making a request. Yet Rogile dismissed this as a pointless ritual. As a king, he saw no reason to humble himself by kneeling. Just as they were preparing to leave, he called out and halted them. The leader then inquired what it was the king truly wanted from them when he could not even bring himself to kneel, to break down and plead for help. The Lama Blat stands as a true masterpiece. Its presence has become a familiar part of my daily life. The idea to take the boys on a monster hunt sprang from his creative mind. Noticing the boys deep in conversation, he realized they had caught the meaning of his words. Without warning, the leader struck him and demanded to know if the other two planned to join the fight, insisting he could easily handle this opponent alone. The dragon's fury boiled over, while the bandits unleashed every last weapon in their arsenal. Determined to wring the greatest reward from this battle, they spared no effort, burning through all their strength. Blow after blow landed, the dragons staggering under their relentless assault. For a fleeting moment, the king allowed himself to believe that victory was already theirs. Alongside Shara, he surged forward, but suddenly an unseen barrier brought him up short. The source revealed itself to be Zeke, a name once heard only from Diamond, yet now confirmed before his own eyes. The question arose whether he was asking not to interfere, or perhaps had chosen to side with the animals. The protagonist explained that he supported neither group, he simply couldn't abandon an injured person. The leader considered this an act of kindness, yet Zeke, bare-handed, crushed his sphere forged from the toughest halcon. The dire state of the ice dragon became immediately clear. Time was slipping away. Without hesitation, he unleashed a paralysis spell against his enemies. His abilities proved to be far more extraordinary than mere healing. She found genuine joy in witnessing his newfound mastery. The minister eventually concluded that the credit truly belonged to him. Rojai himself had no idea he possessed such remarkable power. She let her brother know that she was ready. The protagonist decided they would depart together, accompanied by the ice dragon, and make use of the teleportation portal. Before they left, the girl turned to the dragon and promised they would take her to the Beastmen Kingdom, news which filled the dragon with joy. The king's voice rang out as he called to the young man, praising his bravery for coming to the country's aid during such troubled times. The king assured him that the past would be left behind and even hinted at the possibility of reinstating him to his former post. The king seemed ready to say more. Ignoring him completely, she muttered a silent curse against that wretched dragon love. Realization dawned that the egg was stuck inside her, making it impossible for her to lay it and putting her in grave danger. He gently asked why she would come to him in such a condition, knowing he might not have arrived in time. Silent and withdrawn, she offered no answer. Someone quietly suggested that her concern had been for him above all else. Zeke concluded that this must be the king of the ice dragons. Tiffany greeted the dragon's sovereign with reverence, addressing him as the divine king. Many seasons had drifted by since Mint last laid eyes on the princess of the divine beast, yet recognition came instantly when she faced the dragon king Elron. Without hesitation, she revealed that he was the supreme deity among all dragons, the legendary winged Elron himself. A hint of satisfaction flickered in Elron's gaze, knowing that even a human child remembered his name. Meanwhile, Zeke struggled to grasp how such a majestic ruler had found his way to this place. According to his account, the ice dragoness was his seventh wife. Lately, he had noticed her acting strangely, yet the thought that she might be pregnant never crossed his mind. When the king asked why she had kept this news from him, she remained silent. Mint speculated that her silence was driven by fear of the looming struggle for the throne, and this assumption proved to be correct. Mrs. Friend explained that if her child were born before the queen's, it would result in a scandal. To avoid this, she chose to hide away with her baby. Elron came to realize that this newborn would be his first child. Unlike other kings, he lacked a rigid stance on succession. Deep down, he felt genuine joy at the thought of their child's arrival. For having left him, if only for a moment, she had to accept his unique kind of punishment. His love for her had only grown deeper than before. Grateful for this newfound devotion, she joined her future child in expressing heartfelt thanks to him. Apologies were offered for interrupting such a heartfelt moment, yet the urgency of the situation was clear. The king inquired whether the healer could save her. The young man assured him that he could, but explained that a natural birth was no longer possible. In his view, only a surgical incision offered any hope. Elrond realized what this meant. The healer would need to touch the dragon's body. The healer confirmed this, expressing his willingness if it truly meant saving both mother and child. The king hesitated, uncertain how to respond. Confidence radiated from him without the need for words. His resolute gaze conveyed everything. The king timidly requested permission to keep his two most cherished dragons by his side. To this, Zeke calmly replied that there was no need to repeat himself. He already understood perfectly well. In the end, he managed to bring X back. Genuine happiness welled up within him for the child's sake. The king, meanwhile, remained troubled by thoughts of the child's safety. Zeke reassured them, insisting everything was fine. Life pulsed anew in his chest, and he could sense the gentle embrace of his wings once more. The room trembled, signaling that the newborn was about to arrive. Elrond urged everyone to hold on to hope and vowed to return. Even the child's mother called out to him. Mint reassured the group, explaining that dragons rarely form attachments immediately after birth. With that, he made his way to welcome the little one. Chanel bristled with irritation, her frustration rooted in her recent arrival to this world. Tai, too, felt the urge to grow annoyed. Each of them had been told to step back and refrain from interfering. Meanwhile, Mint discovered the mystery behind how children are born. The boy received heartfelt thanks for his remarkable work. Zik, however, treated the whole affair as just another task. Elrond pointed out that modesty in this case was almost an insult to his own achievements. Delivering a dragon's offspring was no ordinary feat. Such a task demanded not only exceptional medical skill, but also extraordinary magical power and a deep well of knowledge about the different Kai species. No one but Zik could have succeeded. The king felt truly grateful to have him by his side. Departure awaited him. The boy inquired about his wife and child, prompting Elra to calmly explain that she would stay with them for a while longer. He mentioned the need to thank someone as well, which took me by surprise. Request a report detailing the damages sustained. Mr. Pan reported several accidents and crop damages caused by the recent chill, likely the work of dragons. However, thanks to Zeke's swift intervention, these troubles never escalated into a serious crisis. The king pondered whether this was truly the result of Zeke's efforts and his. None of them could have imagined that Zeke might be living in a place like this. Then, without warning, the Dragon King paid them a visit. Outrage flashed across his face in an instant. These were the king's private chambers after all. Who could have permitted this stranger to enter? I had the distinct impression that the minister recognized him from somewhere. Unperturbed by the tension, the visitor announced himself calmly. By a peculiar twist of fate, he said, he too was a king. His name was Elrond, the Dragon God King, the supreme ruler of all dragons with vast, majestic wings. Elrond explained that his presence here was no coincidence. Long ago, in these very lands, an ice dragoness, his wife, had once been seen. She bore no ill will toward anyone, yet became a victim during an attack. Now, Elrond seeks the one responsible and asked if they knew anything about it. Both hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. His reply was calm and certain. He had witnessed everything with his own eyes. The culprits, he explained, were a pack of ravenous wolves. As far as he knew, a gang bearing that very name had attacked the dragon, and the king himself confirmed the account. The attacker confessed to his actions, emphasizing that he had followed the direct orders of the king. He offered a sincere apology. The attack had nothing to do with him. The minister's anger was palpable, yet a brief moment of contemplation passed over Elrond's face. That fleeting pause was all he needed. Retribution was near. Soon, they would answer for every crime committed against his people. The castle lay in ruins. This time, the Dragon King would consider it a mere unfortunate accident and leave those responsible unpunished. Next time, however, he would unleash the full fury of the dragons to erase them from existence. He sent a warning. Let this be remembered. This time, the hero Makin joined their group, though he had missed the most exciting part. The king welcomed his arrival with clear satisfaction. She arrived at Zik's home, her face brightening with a cheerful smile as she caught sight of him. In a light-hearted tone, the boy asked if she had behaved herself that day. With a confident nod, the girl assured him she had indeed been obedient, though her words hinted there might be more to the story. With a troubled glance in their direction, Zeke inquired about what had happened. The girl reassured him that everything was fine. Aside from the usual minor inconveniences, all sorts of odds and ends kept finding their way into Zeke's home. Eventually, Zeke realized there was no other choice. Elron and the Ice Dragon had come to him personally with this request, so he agreed to lend a hand. Still, the girl remained dissatisfied. She believed that just because someone asks for a favor, it doesn't mean you have to oblige. Despite her misgivings, she spent the entire day at Zeke's side. The newcomer, a girl called Shia, received her name from Zeke. Zeke explained that he named her Shia because of her sky-blue scales. For a moment, he worried that she might not like the name, but she expressed her gratitude. However, as Kai-chan pointed out, the real issue lay elsewhere. She could not comprehend why Zeke believed he had the right to name someone else's child. The importance of family always comes first for dragons, he explained. So grateful was the Dragon King to his brother that he offered him the honor of choosing the newborn's name. Zeke realized, with a quiet resignation, that nothing could alter what would happen next. Mutual understanding could have blossomed between them. A strange voice reached the boy's ears, prompting him to ask who was there. By then, Kai-chan had vanished without a trace. She was gone as well, like a melusine, slipping away through spatial manipulation. The boy then asked what the stranger truly desired. She gently reassured him not to worry and explained that she simply wished to ask a question. Introducing herself as Olina, she prompted Zeke to clarify once more what exactly she expected from him. Finding the right words proved difficult for her. Zeke devoted himself to helping anyone in need, yet that was never the favor she had sought from him. Ironically, this became the very thing everyone expected of him. Monsters, gods, beasts, and dragons, creatures that would never cross paths in everyday life, gathered cheerfully around him, placing their trust in one another. To her, it remained a mystery how such a scene could ever become reality within her own home. Thoughts about this often crossed his mind, yet the answer never changed. Only those who could prove useful to him received his aid. Others were left alone to search for him, to seek the path and divine power he held tightly in his grasp. The world unfolding around him was nothing more than the result of his own decisions. In his view, the matter is simple. Drawing a line between humans and beasts serves no purpose. They are all the same. Zeke, calm down. Chan struggled to make sense of his own feelings, uncertain about what was happening within him. Offering an apology, he admitted that his mind had wandered. Meanwhile, Drew's gaze shifted, drawn toward something that had quietly captured his interest. In a swift movement, one of the others darted over to the boy, her voice trembling with urgency as she pleaded for him to come with them, hurriedly explaining that trouble had found them. The patrol officers hadn't been told exactly when the visitors from across the border would arrive, so they had no choice but to wait for confirmation. McKinnon found himself at a loss, unable to grasp what was being discussed or why he was being mistaken for someone else. Faced with bureaucratic obstacles, quick thinking and creativity became essential. Confident that no one would recognize him in this place, he introduced himself without hesitation. Howard of Slot Macon stood as the finest the new Royal Guard could offer. His unexpected arrival stirred confusion among those present. A warrior, unable to contain his excitement, loudly announced the hero's presence and ordered the gates to be opened. With a swift kick, the door swung open. The soldier glanced up, startled, demanding an explanation for such audacity. Without hesitation, the man retorted that the real issue lay in their lack of preparation. No one had bothered to get things ready as they should. His eyes narrowed as he warned them not to vex him further with their foolish notions. The inspector finally concluded that this man truly did not meet the necessary requirements. People like him could not be permitted entry into the country. The stranger calmly replied that there was nothing to worry about and assured the inspector that once allowed in, he would handle everything on his own. Despite this, the guard attempted to restrain him. With astonishing strength, the hero carved a path through the colossal gate of unbreakable stone, slipping past the vigilant guards who surrounded it on all sides. Requesting passage, he found himself blocked by a surly guard who, citing regulations, forbade anyone from going forward. Frustration quickly flared within the boy. Their game unfolded according to their own rules, yet Warren recognized with absolute clarity that they had made the opening move. He knew there was no reason for them to lay blame at his feet. The nature of this magic eluded their understanding. Mac possessed the power to unleash his forces upon their homes behind them. Had he chosen to destroy the entire village and everyone in it, their obedience would have been assured. This realization filled them with dread. A considerable reserve of magical energy pulsed within him, more than enough to obliterate not just their humble dwellings, but to wipe the entire country from the map. Poor souls, so unaware of the danger they faced. Yet in that crucial moment, something unexpected held him back. The rescuer turned out to be Zeke, and in that moment, he realized he was standing before the legendary hero, Maken. Most likely, he had been exiled from the kingdom, deliberately setting out to pursue him. The boy's magic had faded, leading him to believe it was nothing more than a distraction or some similar ploy. Realization dawned that the man before him was a Sikh, sent directly by the king himself to retrieve the boy. The method chosen to persuade him to return struck him as rather amusing, and he was about to witness it firsthand. Drawn back to his seat, he had no desire to discover just how terrible the stench in that nest could be. To make matters worse, his deodorant had been left at home. Zeke's words urging him to head back lingered in his mind, leaving a powerful impression. Once more, he uttered those words. No longer a citizen of Garta, but now a native of Naragma, the land of beasts, with no intention of ever returning. The admission stirred something deep within Mac, leaving an undeniable mark on his heart. Frustration flickered across Max's face whenever Zeke backed him into a corner like this. Seeking a more mature response, Max urged Zeke to act with the composure of an adult and simply listen to what he had to say. The warrior reminded him of the king's order to deliver him alive. The hero understood all too well what was at stake, yet what truly counted as alive. Would it suffice for breath to linger in a body? Was a beating heart enough to satisfy the king's whim? Perhaps it was simply a matter of dragging him back, one eye lost and powers stripped away, and calling that survival. The sacred sword gleamed in his hand, summoned with a single purpose, to bring death to Zeke. The character unleashed a paralyzing attack, managing to hold his adversary in place. Concern flickered across the warrior's face, but the paralyzed man shot him an angry order to stay silent. He demanded the warrior step back, warning that lingering nearby would only bring death. Surprise flickered across his face. Paralysis was considered a skill of the lowest rank. How could such a basic ability have enabled someone to strike him down with a holy sword? The thought seemed absurd, almost impossible. Most likely, it was nothing more than a ruse. Nakan concluded that Zeke had merely pretended to use an entirely different technique. Advice urged him to turn back and head home if he wished to avoid harm. Yet he took those words as a challenge, convinced of his own courage and believing himself a warrior chosen by the goddess herself. The barrier stands firm, nullifying any magic performed by ordinary people. As long as this protective wall remains, elemental spells will achieve nothing. Meanwhile, he relentlessly gathers strength, intent on utterly eradicating Z. Counting down as if marking the last seconds of his life, he whispered, 130%, 120. Meticulously, McKean gathered every fragment of magic, erasing all traces of Zeke's energy. Yet Zeke caught him off guard with a sudden shift, this time unleashing a completely different magic. The hero stared in astonishment. After enduring a surge of electricity, now snow and ice swept in, the chill biting deep. Sharp and resourceful, Zeke acted swiftly, though it seemed McKean barely registered his efforts. At this moment, no attack could pierce McKean's defenses. He had become invincible. Magic Zek halted his foe mid-attack and sent a jolt of electricity coursing through him. Stunned and trembling, the enemy demanded to know what had just been done to him. Drawing upon the heavenly skill he gained through an alliance with the dragon, the protagonist unleashed Miss Ice's alchemy. This newfound power surpassed even the abilities of the goddess, leaving the enemy struggling to comprehend what had just unfolded. During the battle, Ari's mastery of mist and ice alchemy advanced by another 32 points. Despite the enemy appearing defeated, Zeke remained unconvinced. Counted among the world's most powerful heroes, he asked the warriors to take him with them and instructed them never to return. After recounting the entire tale to the queen, he added that the boy had been sent away. The queen fell silent, lost in thought, her mind troubled by the suspicion that she might have made a disastrous mistake. News never reached them, so the hero entered their land as an emissary. The arrival of a stranger promised only further complications for the people of that country. Zeke, burdened by regret, keenly felt the weight of this truth. The trolls interrupted, insisting the enemies had struck first and that Zeke's-san was merely defending them. If there was any fault, it lay only in their failure to complete the mission. They expressed readiness to accept whatever punishment awaited them. Lisboy and Zik were one and the same. The response was that no one had considered any form of punishment, yet the king remained resolute. Should rumors spread that they had abducted someone as influential as Zeke, the resulting scandal could spark a widespread war with every neighboring human kingdom. He insisted upon arriving of his own free will. The queen, however, calmly retorted that unless he could prove this before the entire world, his words remained meaningless. Someone among those gathered turned to Lady Sophia. The suggestion arose to bestow a knighthood upon Lord Zeke. By making it known that Zeke held not only importance, but also genuine respect as a citizen of Naragma, any attempt by him to cause harm would become far more difficult. Both Sophia and the young man found merit in this proposal and offered their support. The realization struck him that he would soon become a noble. Even the appointment to chief physician felt like an unbelievable honor. Yet Tiffany insisted there was more. He was to be granted royal status. Queen Sophia confirmed her words. News of this development stunned the entire country. News of the knighthood spread quickly, stirring up tremendous excitement among the people. Approval echoed not only through the halls of Parliament, but also across the bustling city squares. Everyone vied to express admiration for her brother, each trying to outdo the last in praise. The sudden departure of the guest of honor cast a shadow over the festivities. In response, Zeke remarked that with the ceremony and formalities now behind them, the time had come to truly enjoy the evening. Reaching for a drink, she remembered hearing that alcohol was permitted here from the age of 15. Curiosity took over, and she decided to take a sip. The taste pleased her. She admitted it was true, though a wave of embarrassment washed over her. Still, just a child, her heart brimmed with curiosity and a longing to experience all the unfamiliar things the world had to offer. Mint firmly believed that some actions should never be taken. An example immediately sprang to mind, yet something held her back from sharing it. Zik found himself eyeing the same girl his sister had questioned just moments before. Although confusion swirled within him about her true identity, a quiet certainty told him she was not an enemy. Elena, watching carefully, realized the girl was already part of their circle. They all understood now that listening to her would be necessary. Arriving with a humble request, she sought his expertise as a veterinarian, hoping he would lend his assistance. Her father holds the fearsome title of Demon Lord. Defying the authorities, the minister found himself stunned by the turmoil unfolding throughout the country. Confusion clouded his mind, unable to grasp the cause of the unrest or the heart of the issue. The guard offered a terse explanation, calling it an eruption of public anger. According to him, an outbreak on the state farms had sent food prices soaring. The sentries had lost control, order had faltered, and recently things had only grown worse. Immediate action was needed to address the situation. By then, the king's strength had faded almost completely. He held an unshakable belief that the heroes were responsible for everything. Macon, a true hero to the core, would never forgive this scoundrel. He would see to it himself. The plan was to force him to witness everything firsthand. The guard explained that this condition had persisted ever since his return. Not even the king's attempts to sway him had made any difference. The warriors appealed to Macon, urging him to halt, as his actions were disturbing those around him. They reminded him of his reputation as a hero, someone who had constantly taught them the importance of self-control. In response, the young man cut them off abruptly, commanding them to stay silent and not to dictate his actions. He replied that although it was the king who had called them together, their team's true purpose lay in defeating the Demon Lord, a goal they should never lose sight of. The other man simply flashed a mocking grin. The idea of them being called a team caught him off guard, for he saw only a band of weaklings whose numbers served little purpose. In his eyes, without the strength of a real hero like himself, they would have met their end long ago. At that moment, someone approached him. News arrived that Seek, Fettel, and Ari had already been tracked down. The hero stood poised, ready to deal with them without delay. Word reached him that they were hiding within the Demon Lord's castle. The young man recognized that the moment had finally come. A brutal reckoning awaited everyone inside. The castle rose before him, its grandeur stopping him in his tracks. Elena quietly asked if fear had crept into his heart. With no escort to guide them, uncertainty hovered in the air, yet he remained certain this was no trap. The only thing that unsettles him is the sudden appearance of the heroes. For this reason, Mint and the others hung back. The boy wanted to make sure the girl truly believed in her decision to lead a human into the demon's lair. She answered that her actions were for the sake of her father. The princess grew weak and collapsed onto the ground. Zeke immediately assumed she had been struck by a curse. At that moment, a stranger approached them and sternly remarked that the princess should never have done such a thing. Jem greeted them with a firm reminder to behave with more courtesy in public, pointing out that loud and unruly conduct was entirely inappropriate. Curiosity filled the air as they wondered why their princess had brought a frail human into her chambers. Zika offered a polite apology for his earlier behavior and introduced himself with quiet dignity. That may be so, but ultimately, the one you'll have to answer to is him. For now, Jammer is acting as Prime Minister in place of the ailing ruler. He urges caution and advises against any rash decisions. Inquiring gently, he asked if the princess felt any better. The young woman offered a faint smile and replied that she was more or less all right. She then requested that the man take a look at her father, explaining that no one in the castle had been able to heal the ruler, and they desperately needed a fresh perspective. Jammer doubted this would make a difference, so Zeke and the girl quietly exited the room. She guided the young man through winding halls to her father's private chambers. Zeke caught on to her implication. Evidently, demons were not always loyal to their kind. Most likely, this very sorcerer had cast the curse on Yulina, and from the way he spoke, his outlook was unmistakably old-fashioned. If this suspicion held true, then the demon lord's illness must also be his doing. Once, I encountered a similar curse, though it lacked the formidable power woven into Elinus's affliction. The young woman then turned to inquire about his thoughts on the matter. The severity of his condition could no longer be denied. A powerful curse crept through his body like a spreading web, gnawing away at him from within. Any attempt at ordinary healing threatened to make everything fall disastrously apart. The absurdity of it all brought genuine amusement to Jabba. The realization dawned that the beings before me were demons. Their forms bore no resemblance to humans, animals, or any creature I had ever encountered, and the current of magical energy swirling around them felt utterly unnatural. Unfamiliar with such phenomena, I turned to my advisor, who quietly inquired about the situation. Memories of the power that healed the dragon surfaced in his mind, prompting him to ask Elena if she believed in it. With unwavering certainty, she affirmed her trust in him. A broad smile spread across the minister's face as wonder filled his thoughts. To him, it felt as though the goddess herself had reached out and touched him. He truly believed he had witnessed genuine healing magic with his own eyes. Complete ignorance blinded them. While healing magic could mend any wound for mortals, to demons it acted as a deadly poison. If such power touched a defenseless demon lord, the consequences could only be imagined. Laughter escaped his lips at the thought. Yet it was precisely Zeke's magic that brought the demon lord back to his senses. Realizing where he was, the man finally recognized his daughter. Overcome with joy, the young woman rushed into her father's embrace, their heartfelt reunion leaving a profound impression on Jim. Explaining that he had slept for far too long, the demon lord acknowledged Zeke's role in his recovery. Now realizing there stood a human before him, he offered his gratitude. Zeke responded with a modest smile, insisting he was merely doing his duty as a healer. When questioned about the situation, the minister found himself at a loss for an explanation. After all, healing magic is incredibly hazardous to demons, affecting them much like a lethal poison. He admitted openly that he didn't know for certain, but not a trace of doubt lingered in his confidence. Each time, his divine powers had been growing stronger. Perhaps meeting Elena and the sincerity of his desire had granted him even greater strength. The realization moved the girl deeply. He found the idea absurd. No one should have been able to lift that curse. Yet the demon lord realized it had truly happened. No one else would have dared to attempt such a thing. According to Jammer, he had honestly hoped the supreme ruler would remain his puppet. Nothing lies within his power to alter. All that remains is to eliminate anyone who dares to cross his path. For now, he remained out of harm's way, but his weakened state left him unable to fight. Waiting for the gastric acid to dissolve them completely was not an option. The demon lord realized that the room itself was the manifestation of Jammer's magic, a carefully orchestrated maneuver. Despite this revelation, Alan felt paralyzed by uncertainty, unable to decide their next move. In that moment, Zeke quietly asked her to place her trust in him. Laughter still echoed from his lips. The thought of unleashing the hybrid magical beast had never once crossed Zeke's mind. Yet now, backed into a corner, no other option remained. In that moment, he summoned the chilling power of frost mist alchemy. Jammer stood stunned as the truth sank in. A specially bred monster, a demon of a unique class, created solely to destroy the demon lord, had fallen to an ordinary human. The one who accomplished this was Zeke Kato Lane. The moment for revenge had arrived, but Jammer refused to act just yet. With a commanding voice, he ordered the army of demonic overlords to wipe them out. The realization dawned on the Lord that the entire army now moved at his command. This awareness unsettled Olina, who remained confined by the paralysis cast upon her by Zika. Wasting no time, magic for instant teleportation was put to use. In that moment, realization dawned on her. It was those teleportation crystals at the root of everything. First Zoroa, then the elf, and now this. It felt as though someone was buying them in bulk. The Lord had once explained that Jammer was the creator of these crystals, handing them out to anyone who asked. All signs pointed to him as the mastermind behind it all. Still, what truly astonished the Lord was how a mere human doctor had managed to crush their army. The boy, for his part, found it difficult to believe that the infamous demon lord, humanity's sworn enemy, could act with such calm restraint. Elena couldn't guess how others saw her father, but to her, he was always both an exemplary ruler and a caring parent. The Lord himself understood well why his name carried both glory and dread. A reminder of the demon lord's curse echoed among them. Zeke affirmed that every beast in the world suffered under its weight, losing their senses and turning violently against humans. The ruler calmly agreed, pointing out that such chaos was not of his doing. He then invited everyone to witness the truth for themselves. A mark bearing the insignia of a demon had been etched onto his body. It turned out to be the founder's curse. They explained that this mark was left by Belial, the first lord of demons and founder of their lineage. The demon's symbol appears on each successive demon king and never fades. As long as this sign endures, all demons and infernal beings will remain under his dominion. Such power only serves to strengthen the Dominion Lord's rule. At the same time, this symbol stands for ideals born from Bolil's vision. No matter how many centuries or even millennia pass, demons will remain humanity's everlasting adversaries. She explained further that not all demons thirsted for meaningless conflict. Her father had once sought a path toward peaceful coexistence. The Lord then revealed that Jammer had taken advantage of this very hope. Upon inquiring about the curse, he politely asked if they would allow him to assist in lifting it, provided they had no objections. Jammer resolved to test his strength against the curse that had haunted the demon kings for generations. Sick realized there could be no assurances of success. Gifted with strength to support those in pain, he finds himself unable to turn away from anyone in need. The Lord observed a fierce determination blazing in his eyes. Trusting this newfound resolve, he confided in the young man and asked for his help to break the endless cycle of curses. Driven by unwavering resolve, he stood prepared to lay down his very life so that future generations would be spared the burden of this curse. Kneeling before him, realization dawned. Standing there was none other than God himself, the ancient lord of demons. Among them stood one whose strength surpassed the rest. He often spoke of things beyond his understanding, yet ironically, the answer to the entire mystery rested in his hands. Power surged instantly in response to the curse's signal. The power to heal anyone, from fearsome demon lords to the gods themselves, suddenly became clear to him. It was Zeke's magic, woven through every corner of the castle. News spread that Zeke, Fettel, and Ari had been honored with the distinguished title of saviors by the Demon King himself. Their very essence seemed to evolve, transforming them into doctors of salvation. Queen Sophia realized with relief that everything was truly all right with him. The Demon Lord remained oblivious to the fact that the curse had spread beyond himself, ensnaring the entire castle. This hidden truth explained why lifting the curse had proven so difficult. Astonishment flickered across his face upon realizing that Master Zek was aware of it. The boy responded quietly, admitting that it was all the will of the gods. The Lord observed that even a virtue like humility is meaningless without wise application. He concluded by expressing relief that this had been the final time. With Zeke's help, the Demon Kingdom was finally able to move forward. The princess agreed with his words and expressed her gratitude, genuinely glad she had invited him. At that moment, an important memory resurfaced in the doctor's mind. Lana needed only a moment to close her eyes. The girl muttered that the boy had apparently forgotten to lift the curse from her, but now, it seemed, everything should be all right. A peculiar look crossed her face as she met his gaze. The princess quietly asked him to stop teasing her. Confusion clouded Zeke's mind, leaving him uncertain about what she meant. With an ominous command, summoning the demonic lord, the boy instantly recognized the voice. Makon intended to wipe out every last one, sparing no one. New companions had appeared nearby, he noticed. Sik had underestimated just how foolish he truly was. No lesson ever seemed to reach him, no matter how simple. Admitting their own carelessness, they realized they had removed the lock only to allow Zack inside. The protagonist reassured them, insisting that no real harm had been done. Suspecting that the enemy had arrived with the intention of overthrowing the Demon Lord, he offered reassurance, explaining that there was no longer any cause for concern. Zek had broken the curse that once drove all monsters and demons into madness. With that threat gone, there remained no reason to continue the fight. The opponent could not hide his genuine astonishment at this revelation. The question hung in the air. Had he truly not seen? The Demon Lord had never craved chaos. His only wish was a peaceful existence for his people. Yet for Makon, such matters carried no weight. A hero needed no further justification to slay the Demon Lord, regardless of his nature, benevolent or cruel. With these words, a silence settled over the three of them. Next, he remarked that the pursuit of justice was inevitable. The Lord would have to answer for crimes that had brought him such disgrace. Even after enduring 100 days of torment, forgiveness would remain out of reach. Zack realized that nothing could be changed now. In response, one of the enemy warriors conjured a protective barrier shaped like an eclipse. With the technique known as Heavenly Demon Palm, a single strike from him shattered the ground beneath their feet. He noted that, as true heroes often do, these warriors stood out clearly among the rest. His tone carried a touch of casual ease. According to his words, Z had once managed to defeat him unexpectedly, but now he would not allow such an opportunity to arise again. Crush them and make them answer for all their deeds. Brages from his squad invoked a spell. Magic was also employed to pinpoint the whereabouts of the demigod. The bells of destruction rang out, their resonance marking the start of a unified attack. The Demon Lord's eyes narrowed as he noted the squad's precise coordination and sharpened strength. Sensing a real threat in their flawless teamwork, he began to monitor their every move with greater vigilance. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he sensed that familiar power. Relief washed over him at the thought that the enemy had been defeated, but a comrade quickly corrected him. The foe was still alive, not a scratch marred sick, who stood unharmed. The hero's attention was drawn to an object clutched in Sick's hand. Jimmy found himself puzzled by his possession of the sacred saber. Even Zeke was left in disbelief, still struggling to comprehend how such a thing could have happened. The Lord recognized that this saber brimmed with a hero's power, and it was this very energy the weapon craved. Certainty rang in his voice, and doubts or possible mistakes could not sway him. Such concerns held no weight. In this world, space existed for only a single hero. One of his companions suddenly realized the truth. The mantle of hero belonged to only one among them. Those words felt perfectly chosen for the moment, as if they were meant only for him, unique and irreplaceable. Suddenly, a surprising turn unfolded when before Zeke stood Tam, a warrior from Elton. Without hesitation, Zeke placed his trust and life in this warrior's hands. Not a hint of awareness crossed his face as he babbled nonsense. He pleaded for loyalty not to the jester, but only to Beck, believing him the sole true leader. The warrior then questioned whether he possessed the power to summon the sacred sword. Confidence filled him, certain that success was inevitable for someone as brave as he was. Yet despite his courage, the task slipped beyond his grasp. The realization struck him that Macon was no longer a hero. Perhaps even the goddess herself had turned away from him. The king struggled to understand why he was being treated with such disgrace. An anxious guard urged him to endure a few more moments until the crowd departed from the castle. Contempt filled Rogal's thoughts as he regarded his subordinates as fools who had forgotten their duty to their monarch and acted with shameful disregard. The gathering of commoners soon turned into an outright rebellion, forcing the king to flee the castle in haste. People wondered where the prime minister had gone. The guard hadn't seen him, likely because he was busy suppressing the uprising. His complaints persisted until a portal unexpectedly opened nearby. Recognizing the spell as a teleportation incantation, the guard promptly warned everyone to stay alert. Everyone swiftly retreated from the portal. Zeke had issued a warning about the danger. The Demon Lord apologized, admitting he had miscalculated the teleportation coordinates. The king recognized Zeke at once. Curiosity filled the room as Rogal tried to decipher the intentions of the boy who had suddenly appeared. Rogal's certainty grew that this unexpected visit revolved around him. Strangers now stood nearby, their gazes fixed intently on him, their desires unreadable. A tense silence hung in the air, while everyone waited for him to shed light on the situation. The king listened intently, absorbing every word. According to the storyteller, it was Seek Vatal and Ari who wrested the hero's title away from Mehan. They had confronted the Demon Lord themselves and managed to sway his judgment. Such a feat left the ruler deeply impressed. The Overlord admitted his true identity, conceding that he owed this change of heart to Zeke's power. No longer did he possess any desire to wage war against humanity. With genuine remorse, he apologized on behalf of all demons for his past deeds. The king, somewhat surprised by the Demon Lord's reserved words, remarked on his unusual brevity. Rogel, however, emphasized that Zeke was a true hero. Not only had he defeated the demon overlord, but had captured him alive. The king wished to discuss the matter of demons. He ordered the guards to prepare for a public execution, a command that greatly surprised Zeke. The monarch explained that once he convinced the people, he would go down in history as the ruler who brought peace to the world. At this, Zeke asked him to clarify what he meant. Assurances were given that he need not worry. The grim honor of executioner would fall to Zeke instead. Outrage flashed in the boy's eyes, for the demon lord was not evil. Cursed magic had driven his hand, a force he had managed, in the end, to overcome. Henceforth, neither demons nor monsters would threaten humankind again. The Lord believed that everything had turned out favorably. Lifting the curse did not erase what had already come to pass. It was a small price to pay, the cost of a single life. The king accepted this reasoning and expressed his sincere gratitude for the understanding shown. Thoughts already danced in his mind of using the reward to hunt the remaining monsters. With time, as those creatures grew, taking them down would become even easier. The idea of building an arena took shape, a grand place where townsfolk could revel in the spectacle of monster hunts, a true delight for the people. Yet Zeke put an end to his musings. The ruler questioned him, raising his voice in authority. In response, Zeke drew the sacred sword of the hero. Recognition flickered in the ruler's eyes at the sight of the storied relic. The sword shimmered with a radiance that rivaled the ruler's own grandeur, and, as legend held, its enchantments were powerful enough to repel even Lad Tur and the most formidable of kings. Without fully realizing his actions, Zeke finally proclaimed with solemnity that the decision had been made. A land will rise where everyone finds a place, a country where even monsters may live without fear. Everyone assumed he had lost his mind, yet Zeke stood firm in his resolve, believing with certainty that even monsters deserved the chance to live in harmony, just like people and animals. The real issue lies in the fact that most of them have truly caused a great deal of harm to people. Some even lost their lives, so the outrage is completely understandable to him. A nation must be built where those facing discrimination can finally live in harmony. Over time, people would come to realize their equality, regardless of their backgrounds. Rogel dismissed this idea as utter nonsense and doubted that Zeke could achieve it on his own. Yet Zeke reassured him that he was not alone in this endeavor. Countless dragons wheeled through the sky above. Queen Sophia, Dragon King Elron, and all the others stood ready to lend him their support. Surrounded by influential allies like the Beast Queen, the Dragon King, and the Demon Lord, he watched as their numbers quietly multiplied with each passing day. Rogel suspected that Zeke harbored ambitions of world conquest, perhaps even aiming to seize the title of Demon Lord. Yet, deep down, such grand dreams held little appeal for him. Should the need arise, he stands prepared to take on that role himself. The Lord realized that if he was destined to assume this role, embracing it might make everything much simpler. Perhaps softening his title could help it sound less intimidating to the people. News spread that Zeke Vital and Ari had been granted the title of Demon Lord, their rebirth signaling the arrival of saviors for all living beings. From the moment their paths first crossed in the forest, an unshakable sense of inevitability took root within her, telling her that everything would unfold just as it now was. He has chosen his own path, and she will remain by his side, offering steadfast support and guidance every step of the way. The mere suggestion that she might feel like his wife stirred anger within Chan. She prided herself on being the one always by Zeke's side. Meanwhile, Mayata firmly believed both of them were mistaken, absolutely certain that her brother cared about her the most. Yet Kai-chan stood apart, quietly convinced that neither of them could ever compare to her. The master entrusts Zeke with the responsibility of looking after Olina. Without hesitation, the boy agrees to take on this duty. The Lord inquired if Regal had finally grasped the gravity of his predicament. With nothing left to do, Regal could only watch events unfold from the sidelines. The king wondered aloud whether they genuinely believed anyone would choose to follow such an inept group. News spread swiftly. The people had already united against them. Neighboring countries had been notified as well, and impressed by the heroic deeds of their dragons, these nations pledged both support and partnership. Disappointment settled over them as their efforts to persuade him to join ended in vain. The Dragon King offered a heartfelt farewell, his words carrying both warmth and respect. Turning to the guard, they inquired about the proper course of action. Uncertain, the guard found himself unable to reply. At that moment, the king himself stepped forward and took charge of the situation. He inquired about the stranger's intentions, while another guard had already gathered some information. It became clear that the townspeople who had seized the castle were demanding the abolition of the monarchy. Parliament sided with their demand, sparking a revolution throughout the country. The kingdom now stood on the brink of collapse. Clueless about the situation, he listened as the guard apologized, explaining that his family needed him, so he could not continue with Rogale. The second guard also took his leave. Vlada pleaded with them, desperate not to be left alone. The sight of the minister soaring through the sky caught him off guard, prompting a bewildered question about when the minister had picked up the ability to fly. Was this some kind of joke? It seemed likely that someone had judged the minister to be more useful than himself. Unaware of his own actions, he moved through the growing gloom as an ominous shadow crept across the sky. The urgency to find Vettel and Ark pressed against his racing thoughts. Whether he was genuinely working at her desk remained uncertain. With a bright smile, the girl announced that she had already finished her homework. Eager anticipation sparkled in her eyes as she set out to visit Zeke. The queen turned her gaze toward her. The moment he announced the founding of his own nation, he wasted no time, putting his vision into action. With the power at hand and Zeke's unwavering support, the Demon Lord's domain began to transform. Once barren deserts gradually awakened, lush greenery spreading across the once lifeless sands. More and more new resources come to light as our discoveries continue. Powerful beasts and formidable monsters from distant lands gathered here, drawn not only by their own ambitions, but also by a shared purpose with ZX. In the blink of an eye, his castle was transformed into one of the continent's most renowned cities. Castle Illinois stood silent as Tiffany swept inside, her heart racing with hope that she would find him there. Dorothy realized Tiffany had already arrived. Recognizing her guest immediately, she understood that Tiffany had come to visit them once more. The princess inquired about how they were doing. The girl assured her that everything was fine, and added that Zeke and the others treated her kindly. News of his departure caught her off guard, especially as it left her to carry out tasks for the Demon Lord alone. Although Tiffany hadn't seen this coming, certainty filled her that Zeke would not be wasting his time idly. The examination revealed that the cow was in excellent health. This discovery brought genuine relief and satisfaction to the farmer. Though initially unsettled by the shift in surroundings, Zeke's unease soon melted away, proving his worries unfounded. The man addressing him first called him Mr. Zeke, then quickly corrected himself to Demon Lord. Yet in Zeke's own heart, he never saw himself as a master or hero, no matter what people chose to call him. The farmer burst into laughter and nodded approvingly at his decision. Just then, a young woman approached the doctor. The young man gladly tasted the milk that was offered to him, savoring its freshness. The boy immediately noticed an unusual flavor in the milk, tasting the warmth of genuine care within it. The girl saw his reaction, and a quiet happiness filled her heart. The young woman expressed her gratitude, and in response, she was told that they had done everything they could. The girls discovered her whereabouts. The farmer warmly welcomed the demon lady back to her home. Chan scolded Zeke, telling him that skipping work without a good reason simply wasn't acceptable. If he insisted on shirking his duties, then he ought to do it properly. Despite her reprimand, she believed he was working too hard. In the end, Zeke couldn't quite tell whether she was criticizing him or offering reluctant praise. Lost in thought, he realized it had been a long time since he'd seen her like this. In response, Kai-chan remarked that she was his legs. No matter how her form changed, her essence remained the same. Zeke felt grateful to her. Meanwhile, Tiffany wondered why Mint appeared displeased. Yet the reason for her discontent remained a mystery to him. Mint held the prestigious position of chief librarian after all. Still, it became clear she had hoped for more time together, envisioning days spent side by side within the same castle. Instead, his duties kept him constantly away, leaving the burden of paperwork to fall entirely on her shoulders. In the end, Mint chose to request a transfer. A firm hand halted her steps. He explained that Mint's work carried great importance for the children, the future of their country. Everyone was counting on her dedication. The words lingered in her mind, prompting deep reflection. It became clear everything made sense. For her children, for her own future, and for her brother's futures, she stood ready to do whatever was necessary. The young man reiterated his point, reminding her that all of this was for the future of their country. Around midday, Zeke suggested they all have lunch together once they returned to the castle. The girls liked this idea and decided to invite Shia to join them. It forms an integral part of the demonic realm. After being saved, Shah expressed his gratitude to Mr. Rouge and greeted him warmly. Seated with regal poise upon his throne, the demonic ruler, Rouge, gazed down before him. A clear understanding settled in his mind. Without this support, the army of that god would have claimed him long ago. Yet the ruler held fast to an unbroken silence, provoking quiet astonishment in the man whose life had been spared. Sensing the stalemate, Ryu chose to steer the ruler's focus elsewhere. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he saw the artificial magical beast he had recently acquired. The creature's hunger was plain to see, yet it stubbornly refused every offering of food. Doubts crept in. Perhaps something was wrong with it. Caring for pets had never been part of his life before. Upon being asked what he fed his beloved pet, it emerged that he relied on the remains of human bodies. Despite the changes he had undergone, a sense of his former self still lingered within. Recognizing this, he suggested his charge try a different kind of food, such as animal meat. The master understood the idea. Jammer couldn't grasp why he had cut off his own hand. Bruce, calm and composed, simply explained that he was following the rules. Attaining true power requires absorbing it from someone who already possesses it. When asked about this mysterious power, he explained it as the strength of God lifting the founder's curse. The thought of his father and Elena being caught in such a predicament had never crossed his mind. In response to Jama's question, he simply stated he was going to rest and requested to be awakened later. Bruce showed no curiosity about how one might handle the power of a god, a notion so immense it was beyond his imagination. Fury surged through him. Resolving to confront the divine power before dealing with the boy known as Z, he set his course without hesitation. Should he falter, The newly formed army of the Demon Lord would finish the job right on the grounds behind the castle of Vidalanari. The food looked so deliciously tempting that some began to wonder if Mayatka had really been the one to cook it. As it turned out, Mayatka herself had prepared the meal. These were the kinds of lunches she made every day just for her brother. Normally, only he enjoyed such culinary masterpieces, but today was an exception. Interrupting her, he mentioned that every day he invited someone to share a meal with him. To Tiffany, this sounded delightful. She wished she could do the same. Meanwhile, Kai-chan remained puzzled by everyone's preoccupation with homemade lunches, believing she could easily pack her own lunchbox if she really wanted to. The memory resurfaced of the time she had tried to treat her brother to dead mice. That recollection brought a flash of anger to Kai-chan's face. Zek attempted to smooth things over, gently pointing out that every species had its own tastes. She mentioned her fondness for rats, then turned to her boyfriend, asking if he liked them too. Chan made up her mind to master the art of preparing a delicious lunch. Meanwhile, Tiffany waited eagerly for the results. The decision was made to discuss their studies. Velena, a frequent visitor to the library, always spoke with enthusiasm about the books she had read. Velena wanted to make it clear that she truly was a demon princess, residing within their kingdom. Zik nodded, acknowledging that she lived there with her father. They had managed to rid themselves of the cursed founder, so if she was overwhelmed by confusion at the unexpected turn of events. Perched on a tree branch, engrossed in her book, she remained oblivious to her surroundings until he suddenly climbed up beside her, eager to keep her company. His unexpected arrival startled her deeply. With gentle care, he lifted her up and offered a heartfelt apology. Curiosity sparked in her eyes as she asked how he had known she was there. Zeke offered a cryptic reply, attributing his awareness to the power of a god, a gift that allowed him to sense the actions and presence of others within a range of nearly 500 meters. He guessed that must be the case. The boy noticed the book in her hands was a medical textbook. He recognized Elena's unwavering dedication to her studies. According to her, nothing truly worked out, neither mastering spells nor learning how to fight. He invited her to take a seat and promised to listen closely, provided that was what she truly wanted. The princess expressed her gratitude, as he already knew she had been born the daughter of the Demon King. Gifted with no special talent, she watched as those who once watched over her gradually drifted away. In the end, solitude became her only companion. Mocking smiles played openly on their faces, making it clear they saw no reason to hide their scorn. Realization dawned on the boy. She would never have spoken such words to a stranger. The situation felt dreadful. Predictably, the girl replied that she lacked the strength and the qualities needed to become the leader of the demons. At first, the girl believed she could handle her father's illness on her own. Solving this problem, she thought, might bring everyone's attention back to her. A quiet determination filled her heart, and she truly felt capable of overcoming this challenge. Unfortunately, the outcome fell short of expectations. Her condition continued to decline, while the pressure from those around her intensified. The very people who once supported her decisions had grown so powerful that they stripped her of command over the Demon King's army. In the end, she became little more than a ceremonial figure, a mere ornamental princess. If only she possessed a political instinct like her father and brother, or at least some medical knowledge like Zik. Bitter disappointment surged within her, fueled by her own helplessness. A deep conviction settled within him that leading an entire nation was a gift reserved for only a few. The weight of that responsibility would have been unbearable without the support of the divine. Yet now, fate had been sealed and nothing could be changed. Elena agreed with him, urging him to stop feeling sorry for himself and expressed her gratitude for his honesty. The princess apologized for interrupting him and expressed genuine relief that he had listened to her. Since arriving in this place, she truly felt her spirits lift. Suddenly, he confessed that politics had never been his calling, but he would gladly offer his medical expertise to assist her. With a measured tone, he invited her to become his apprentice. Determined to improve, she set out to train on her own. Chan found herself puzzled by all the commotion. Tiffany explained that Zet might take Olina on as his apprentice. The idea left Kai-chan even more confused. Apprentice in what exactly? Her questions never failed to intrigue Mayata. After all, her brother was supposed to be a veterinarian, wasn't he? Meanwhile, the princess had already begun her lessons. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was a veterinarian. Mint felt certain there was so much she could learn from him. Zeke decided to start with the basics. While climbing, Mint told her brother he made a terrible teacher. In response, the boy assured her he could have started by explaining the theory, but chose instead to begin with the kind of knowledge that would prove useful in practice. Displaying remarkable agility, he climbed the rocks with practiced skill. He handed Elena a snowbell hyena flower, a rare plant thriving only on cliffs, soaring above 800 meters. Its petals held the secret to wiping out parasites. Some of the monsters he treats dwell at dizzying heights. For a seasoned Aryan, gathering rare ingredients poses no real challenge. Inspired by this, Olina decided to give it a try herself. However, the young man stopped her. Magic has no place here. Any enchanted interference could alter the properties of the herbs and alert the monster. The deer would need to climb on its own, relying solely on its natural strength. The attempt to carry it out ended in failure. He announced that the next training session would take place on the beach. He then asked if she could see that eyelid. That was all. In her mind, she pictured an injured unicorn lying there. The boy wondered aloud what she would do if faced with such a situation. With magic forbidden, she realized she had no choice but to swim on her own. Zek instructed Kai-chan to jump into the water. The girl quickly grasped that he intended to use her as an example for the others. For those unaware, she was an exceptional swimmer. As the young woman slipped into the water, her path was suddenly blocked by mysterious creatures that inhabited the lake. Something about them seemed unusual, but she had neither the leisure nor the desire to discover what it was. Rumors reached Elena that kelpies, mysterious water spirits, lurked in the depths of the lake, posing a threat to anyone daring enough to swim. Tai-chan confirmed these whispers without hesitation. Annoyance flickered across his face, even though he had half expected this outcome. Zeke voiced his question regardless. In his mind, she would ease herself gracefully into the water rather than dive in headlong. Candidly, she admitted the experience was less than pleasant. Apologized to her. Lately, the kelpies have been acting especially unruly, making her feel like a terrible princess, unable to control her own subjects. However, Kai-chan comforted her, assuring her that the fault did not lie with her, but with Zeke. Chan found herself envying her grown-up charm. Ment offered reassurance, insisting that there was no need to worry since she would win over his brother with her keen intellect. The two girls quickly found common ground and became fast friends. Observing how well they got along, the young man decided it was time to move forward. Tiffany paused, considering what Olina might do in such a predicament. Options flickered through her mind, but neither magic nor swimming offered a solution. The situation reminded Tiffany of a riddle. Zeke chuckled, agreed with her insight, and decided it was time to reveal the correct answer. The situation proved far more complicated than it first appeared. making even the act of walking on water an impressive feat. For Kai-chan, the thought of accomplishing such a task without relying on magic seemed utterly inconceivable. Mint described the process. First, place your foot gently on the water's surface. Before it has a chance to sink, swiftly swing your other leg forward. Continue this pattern step by step. Kai-chan instantly regretted asking. It sounded ridiculous. Mint had no doubt in her mind. Her brother would make a terrible teacher. Why not? Kai replied, since that was the only way he knew. Elena decided to give it a try, while Miyata asked them not to take her brother's words too seriously. Realization dawned on her that this was her own personal trial. Managing to overcome it brought her genuine satisfaction. The other girls expressed surprise at how well she had succeeded. Tiffany suggested that Zika must have been the one to teach Elena, though Miyata remained unconvinced by this idea. The kelpies nodded enthusiastically, their joy sincere as they shared in the princess's happiness. Realization dawned on her that the kelpies were truly on her side. They promised to grant her every wish and took genuine delight in her happiness. Laughter filled the air as everyone enjoyed themselves together. Observing this, Zik concluded that the monster's animosity toward her was much milder than what they felt for the princess. The fog that once clouded their minds gradually lifted, and genuine happiness for her began to shine through. Zeke revealed that this confusion was the result of an ancient curse. Perhaps it had existed since the beginning of time, or perhaps Gemma had been the cause. Most likely, people avoided her in the castle for this very reason. But now, with the curse finally lifted, Eleanor could start forging new connections with those around her. She understood this fully. The kelpies welcomed her warmly, and in turn, Elena was genuinely delighted to befriend them. She received a candid explanation. He no longer had to restrain his magic. Without hesitation, she would undoubtedly find a better way to approach them than he ever could. One of the creatures even asked the doctor for an autograph, and he obliged without the slightest difficulty. Curious about their names, he inquired directly. In response, the creatures identified themselves simply as kelpies. The princess clarified that beings like these seldom possess individual names. Mint remarked that among magical creatures in general, it is rare to encounter anyone with a personal name. New names formed in his mind for each of them: Little Kelpie, Magical Kelpie, and Kelpina. To Kai-chan, this seemed a bit over the top. For the first time, she understood that even her brother had his own weaknesses. Still, Kai-chan cherished her name. It truly appealed to her. Tiffany believed a name like that was easy for even the youngest children to remember. Zeke, meanwhile, bristled at the constant criticism. Then, quite suddenly, the kelpie transformed. Known as Master Zeke, he had undergone a profound transformation deep within himself. For the sake of the lords and the princess, they pledged to become even more devoted and valuable. Mate found it hard to believe that these very elves had transformed into such majestic, nearly divine beings. Amazement filled her as she observed the scene. Never could the girl have imagined that simply giving them names, as Z had done, would trigger such an extraordinary transformation. Mate approached Kai-chan, to whom he had also given a name. Awareness dawned within her that her brother's might meant nothing without a foundation of truth. Kai-chan, ever cunning, continued to scheme against her. At that instant, a memory surfaced in Tiffany's mind. Z possessed the power to summon others as well. There was a time when someone had once called upon him too. It came to light that she was the one who struck first. The Dragon Lord himself confirmed this. They asked what he was doing there. Sensing the timing was right, Elrond made his move. Matt realized the Shire stood on the brink of change. Zeke felt it too, for he was the one who had summoned her. The king explained that dragons possess magical reserves far greater than any other creature. Even the smallest of their wings surpass the development and power found in other magical beings. For her, this meant that evolution might come much more easily. Once, she had been a small, yet strikingly beautiful dragon. Now, she appeared before him as an equally lovely young woman. Intrigued by the prospect of working together, he expressed his interest, and she gladly accepted. Chan wondered if she should greet the elders before joining Androsia. Minta recommended keeping a safe distance from him. Once upon a time, she might have been just a little dragon, but she no longer intended to ignore such things. Anxiety washed over the girl. Elrond, unable to grasp what was happening with the boys, chose to leave quietly. A sense that his presence unsettled many prompted this decision. Meanwhile, Zeke assumed the king had arrived simply to observe her transformation. Now, it seemed, the king was entrusting her care to Zeke instead. Taylor explained that their care for her remained unwavering, though he emphasized her need for stimulation to encourage further growth. Happiness for her friend lit up her face. Drawing her into a gentle embrace, she whispered softly how much she truly cherished her. She realized she had become friends with the demon princess, something that would never have happened without Zeke. Turning to the young man, she asked if he was familiar with the name Onigashima. Zeke confessed that he was hearing it for the first time. He described a picturesque island nestled in the southern seas, a land brimming with magic where one can truly immerse themselves. Curious, the boy asked Mint if she had ever heard of such a place. Mint explained that the island was well known, drawing tourists and pilgrims alike to its so-called power spots. Lately, however, strange rumors had begun to circulate, suggesting the island had grown dangerous. He assured her there was no need for concern. He had recently visited the place himself and found it as tranquil and enchanting as ever. The girl apologized, acknowledging she had no right to argue with someone who had seen it firsthand. The king decided they could make the journey on their own and felt certain she would enjoy it there. Certain that a change of scenery would benefit her weary brother, she believed that rest and new experiences would surely lift his spirits. Eager anticipation filled her as she imagined the adventures their journey would bring. Elena offered her heartfelt wishes for a wonderful trip. Surprise flickered across Tiffany's face when she learned she would not be joining the others. The princess quietly asked if she was truly allowed to come along on the journey. Their friendship was undeniable. When the princess suggested they spend some time together and enjoy themselves, Eleanor could not hide her astonishment. Zeke, however, readily agreed with the proposal. He still had more to teach her, and their training would now continue on Onigashima. Everyone agreed. Kai-chan and Mint insisted they wouldn't let her out of their sight. They promised to look out for each other during battles, in the bathroom, and even before going to sleep. Zeku found this arrangement quite displeasing. The protagonist concluded that the matter had been settled. Considering their destination lay on an island in the South Sea, he surmised they would naturally need a boat or similar means to get there. As it turned out, the king had already arranged transportation for them through his friends. Zeke expressed his gratitude for this thoughtful gesture. Elrond wished them an enjoyable trip and urged them to take good care of Shia. Gathering their belongings, the group began preparing for the journey ahead. Upon returning to this castle, he shared the entire tale of what had transpired. Accompanied by Zeke and the others, she set off for Onigashima, a decision that greatly delighted the queen. Elrond then inquired about the matter. Irvin announced that this island territory had now been declared a high-risk zone due to the discovery of a new species of magical beasts. According to the latest rumors, unrest has been brewing there, making the island an unsuitable place for leisurely strolls. The king admitted he'd received similar reports from his subjects, but urged everyone to remain calm. Elrond had already visited the island himself and confirmed that no disturbances were taking place. They asked when he had last seen him, and it turned out to be 500 years ago. The man remarked that the other might be right, since a dragon now stood before him. Just as the roasted lamb with flounder was about to be served, the servant noticed the guest's refined taste and asked the reason behind his actions. The man froze in shock upon witnessing the furious king, whose hatred for Zeke still burned fiercely. Taking in their surroundings, they finally realized the true nature of anicap. The man expressed his gratitude to the dragon for guiding them to this place. In response, the creature replied with calm indifference, assuring him it was no trouble at all. The dragon warned them to stay alert on this island, leaving Zeke genuinely surprised. Zeke realized that the dragon had been right all along. There was no trace of the relaxing atmosphere typical of a resort island, just as he had warned. A peculiar scent drifted through the air as Tiffany caught sight of a figure ahead. Assuming he was a local, Tiffany turned to face the stranger. As the girls studied his features more closely, a wave of terror washed over them. Suddenly, the man lunged at them. The young man studied the island resident with attentive eyes, and Tiffany found herself thinking he looked as if he had been stranded here for several months. Never before had he encountered a creature like this. Certainly none such existed in the military ranks. Mint suspected it was a native species unique to the island. Creatures known as endemics live exclusively in a specific, limited region. He presented something to her and asked if she could identify it. Without hesitation, Kai-chan recognized what it was. Mint responded that it was a magnified image of his blood, which turned out to be correct. Zeke was merely trying to understand why it appeared that way. The swelling was clearly visible, a telltale sign of this illness. At first, Tiffany assumed the creature must be suffering from some kind of disease. The young man, however, quickly corrected her, explaining that this was not a monster, but an ordinary human. The princess's verdict marked the beginning of ZQ's purification. In the end, he recovered. The islander never fully grasped what had happened. Relief swept over Zeke when he saw that everything had turned out well. T greeted him warmly. One of the few inhabitants of Onigashima, he stands as a member of the island's sole remaining clan. Delight sparkled in her eyes upon meeting him. Elena's happiness overflowed when she learned he had recovered from his serious illness. For Shizu, this reaction brought genuine surprise, as if a shadow of misfortune had always lingered over them. The doctor explained that a viral infection had indeed been the cause, but he had managed to cure the patient. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the resident struggled to find the right words to express his thanks. A realization dawned on him. They seemed to be cursed. Wondering if others suffered the same fate, he soon learned they did. The affliction was not his alone. The entire group had fallen victim. What began as a curse had now become an undeniable sickness. Stood on the brink of total annihilation, Hanagashima was once renowned as the island of tranquility. Ancient traditions of neutrality guided its people, who refrained from taking sides in wars and cherished harmonious living. Those events unfolded on that day, 3 months ago. The girl's attention was captured immediately. The villagers dubbed the monstrous being under the old man's control, the Butcher. Acrid fumes surged forth from its presence, swiftly swallowing the island's air in a thick, oppressive haze. Everyone who inhaled my noxious fumes fell under my spell, transformed into mindless zombies. Realization dawned on him that the island's inhabitants had been breathing in the poisonous air, now clouding every corner of their world. Shizuo confirmed what he suspected. 9 out of 10 people had changed, just as he had. Zeke concluded that the very same fumes they had seen from above had drifted down and blanketed the island. Fear gripped Kai-chan in response. A chilling realization struck them. They, too, were now breathing in these toxic fumes. Fear gripped the girl as a dreadful thought flashed through her mind. Would she rot away like those demons? Would even her chest decay and fall apart? The prospect of Zeke dragging them into this nightmare seemed unbearable. It would be kinder if he ended her life quickly, sparing her from becoming one of those grotesque creatures. Sensing her panic, the boy urged her to calm down. A sense of confusion settled over her as she watched the others remain perfectly calm. Inhaling the toxic fumes she emitted would soon cause their bodies to decay, just as hers had. To everyone's surprise, this was the manifestation of his divine power, a unique immunity acting as a protective shield, much like a living vaccine, safeguarding everyone nearby from the virus. The local residents stood in awe, gradually realizing that this was nothing less than a true blessing from the gods. Dropping to his knees, he acknowledged Zeke as a true messenger from the heavens, a bearer of salvation. Shizu would soon beg him to save their island. The children received the news with heavy hearts, having looked forward to their vacation for so long. It seemed that the brother would miss out on resting. However, Zeke reassured them, explaining that they were only being asked to help for a short while. They would take care of the task quickly and soon set off on their holiday. Once again, the determination of the siblings left the townspeople deeply impressed. At the entrance, Sakura, the current mistress of Onigashima, greeted them. An explanation followed. The man had offered his assistance. Zik introduced himself, prompting Sakura to immediately recognize the famed demon lord known as White. Rumors of his exploits had already swept across the island. To Tiffany, the nickname sounded impressive, even elegant. Meanwhile, Zik felt a twist of surprise, never having considered that such a name belonged to him. It became clear to him that the boy was far from naive. Offering an apology for any earlier rudeness, he tried to make amends. Zeke reassured him that it was no trouble. In his weakened condition, Shizuo wouldn't have managed to do anything anyway. The man commended Zeke for sharing the situation on the island and for warning him about the castle's safety, which had turned out to be true. The island's barrier repels the miasma, preventing it from seeping inside. Yet the moment one steps beyond the gates, its protection fades away. A chilling realization struck him. The situation was far more dire than he had ever imagined. Terrible things had been happening here, all in the name of training shy. Relief washed over Shizuo, knowing he had managed to rescue them just in time and bring them to safety. Uncertainty gnawed at her as she wondered about his well-being, anxiety swirling inside. The truth emerged that Shizuo, embarrassed to admit he had gotten lost in the crowd, kept quiet about his predicament. It was Mr. Zeke, passing by at just the right moment, who noticed his confusion and gently guided him back to his senses. He responded to her, and she realized that a cure did exist. Zeke remarked that explaining every detail was difficult, but the illness resembled an epidemic. Possessing the means to heal this affliction, he could actually reverse its effects. The servants found themselves astonished by Zeke's ability to bring the process back and restore those who suffered. Everyone agrees that Zeke is truly extraordinary. Still, this man remains unsure. The most remarkable thing about Zeke lies in his ability to heal anyone. According to Shizuo, he himself was once a zombie, but managed to recover, which gives him reason for doubt. Belief came slowly to me. The servants remarked that the lady was right. The siege was worth enduring. Mint asked them to clarify what exactly they meant by that. Over the past 3 months, relentless battles raged on. Lady had strictly ordered them not to kill the zombies, and it was then that Mint realized they had been under siege the entire time. It was explained to the people that they were either already dead or stripped of their free will. The reality of their condition was so profound, they could not even recognize it on their own. They decided to ask the ruler to share the truth with them. Perhaps they alone held the key to offering real help. The girls had noticed the kindness that radiated from her. Admitting her own naivety, she realized that postponing solutions only led nowhere. Delaying the inevitable was simply pointless. A politician must discern what is worth preserving and what deserves to be cast aside. Her accusations remain unjustified. In his eyes, she had done nothing wrong. He saw only kindness in her, and it was that very gentleness which had drawn their hostility. With his presence now beside her, a sense of relief settled over everyone. They could breathe easier, trusting him to tend to their wounds.